Whenever you're ready, Jen. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting to order. It's 4:01. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation Region Number 4. These are the traditional territories and ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples, including the Plains Cree First Nations, Assiniboine, Winnewac, Rocky Mountain First Nations, Stoney, Tsuut'ina, Nakota, Denesuline, Sodo, Mountain Métis, Michif, and many other communities that continue to enrich the land on which the town of Hinton was established. So with this sentiment called to order, council, adoption of the agenda, any changes to the agenda? Nope. Administration?
Sir, nothing from administration.
Thank you. So look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor LaBerge.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. So move to adopt the agenda. All those in favor? That is carried. Citizens minute with council. Ms. J. Campbell? No? All right, thank you. We have no delegations or presentations this evening. We have two reports for administration. The first 5.1 at replacement of town-owned sweeper. I'll hand that over to you, ICO Hamlin.
Thank you, sir. We are on page 3 of your agenda package today, and I'm going to turn this over to Winston, and you'll take us through this capital item.
Sure, thanks. ICO Hanlon, through to the committee. What I'd like to do right now, we prepared a little slideshow on what the existing sweeper looks like in terms of some of the repairs, some of the condition assessment right now. And so I'll get John to just walk you through it. We also have at the back then, Lance, who is our mechanic, and the gentleman that has nursed the machine up to this very stage. So if there's any question that flows out of these 5 or 6 slides, Lance would be the best guy to talk through the mechanics of it and some of the challenges he's facing with it. So with that, John, I'll hand it over to you to walk council through or the committee through the pictures.
Thank you, Winston, to the council committee rather. Sorry. So basically, this sweeper is 25 years old. Plus, we've had it since 2001. So we purchased it used, 4 years old. This is just some high level information on it. The report does hold a little bit more in-depth information as well as some attachments, but the chassis motor has significant issues. The floorboards are rusted and worn through. So what that means is that we have some significant risk of silica inhalation for our operators. That's a big one for us. So we require masking to run this unit at the moment. The 2-speed axle is no longer operational, so high range is non-existent. The air compressor is faulty in that it needs repairs. It is likely we're able to get one, but it's not very common. So yeah, it's just building air at the threshold right now. So yeah, we're right there. Rear engine is using oil and full of they live in dust. That's their life. So at its age, it's taking in a lot of that, and it's pretty sludgy as well as using oil. Replacement cost would be nearly $50,000 for the rear engine. The crank fan and pulleys are also worn out. That's on the rear engine. Yeah. So you can switch to the next page there. So we've got some pictures here. We've got some wear around the hopper there that is going to need replacement at some point soon. So that's body work. Continue on, please. This is the faulty air filter. So that's the system that it had.
Yeah, like back in 1997 when this thing was built or whatever, nobody really thought too much about silica and stuff like that. So that's actually the inlet where the fans take air in from outside. There's absolute zero filtration on this unit, as well as like rotted out cab door seals, rusted through. We got some corrosion issues for sure.
Zero pressure in the cab, anything like that. Go ahead to the next. So that is around the weather stripping around the door on the driver's side. We've got rust through. You can see daylight through that. And this is just some of the backboard. All of the hydraulic hoses and wiring are rotted out and need replacement. So this is, yeah, the front
Part of
of
the, through there, yeah. It's-
so pretty rusty and rotten, and need some repairs, more body work. Well, that's the back, one of the pulleys on the backboard. You can speak a little more about that. too.
Yeah, like a lot of the issues we're running into with this unit is that, I mean, the first time back in like say 2017, 18-ish, when I was working for the town, we constantly had issues with the chassis because the chassis itself was only made for a few years by that manufacturer, so it's not very common. It's hard to get parts for. Now we're actually starting to find out the age of the sweeper body itself is also running into a lot of the same issues. So sometimes we pay 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much for the parts.
We have to source them, right, from either,
We can't even get them sometimes.
Yeah.
So we have to get them custom made. As far as the hours and the usage of the sweeper goes, like, it's well past its useful life. So we're basically been looping this thing through the last few years. And at the verge of like changing major components out now, which to me is just kind of putting bad money into it. Because it's gonna start to get very expensive.
estimated cost of bringing it up to today's current standard of sweeping, like with the safety issues and everything, is a ballpark of around $250,000.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting. I'm just getting a couple of texts that people cannot hear. Jen, is there some way in which we can help people that are following along? We've got the overhead mics, guys, but
Yeah,
it's just a matter of making sure.
Parked on the fence because we know we're not far away from major failures with it, so we put it aside and we lean on the other one far more.
Yeah, so in the report, it states that 300 hours a year the unit's used, and that's because it's not a reliable unit. If it were reliable, it would see more like 800 hours per year. Now, we're relying on our second sweeper, which is smaller and also aging. So it's putting unnecessary strain on that one as well, which could, like, it's about 15 years old, our secondary smaller Challenger style sweeper. So that's another concern with having the lack of a powerful primary sweeper to use.
What we can't capture in the numbers is the amount of like downtime and the time that we have to put into keeping this thing running, myself and the other mechanic as well, and that pulls us away constantly from trying to properly maintain the rest of the fleet, right? It's just the one that takes up all of our time. When it's running seasonally, it is a constant item in the shop. So it's just, from our point of view, it's just become not cost effective to run this thing anymore. Like,
Not to mention the safety hazards that it presents to our operators, right? So I think if there's any questions, we can open it up to that, guys.
Great. All right, thanks. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lance. Council, I see Council Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of questions. I just want to do a recap. So you said the sweeper that we have right now, we purchased it in 2001 and it was 4 years old at that time.
That's right.
So we've had it it's 24 years old, eh?
That's right.
Okay. In the report, it says that if we took it to auction, we probably could maybe get 70, 80,000 for it?
Yeah, so I did some comparables research on that too, and I mean, there's some here, a 2005 Elgin, similar model, with a little bit less hours on it. Ours has about 7,500 hours. Now this one's only got about 4,500 hours on it. It's selling for 69,000. And I imagine it will go quickly as these things are pretty hard to get a hold of. People are interested in. Now, one that's that mild out, we probably have to lower the price a little bit. I would say 40 to 50 would be a little more reasonable, but we can definitely recoup something on it.
So I wanted to do a follow-up on that. Is there a warranty on this, this used sweeper that was in our package?
Yes, it does come with a warranty, I believe a 1-year warranty after they take a look at it. So they'll take it in, make sure everything is, hunky-dory after the 1,000 hours have been used. It's kind of a rental return is what they call it. And so it's refurbished and then sent out with a 1-year warranty.
So there's other people in queue, so I can back off and come in then.
Okay, all right. Mayor Michaels?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's pretty evident we need to replace this fairly soon. My only questions really pertain to the options. My question to administration would be, what are the thoughts of potentially going down a hybrid or an electric route for a sweeper, as many municipalities seem to be starting to go that way? Any comments on why that's not in the report, or if it's not a viable option? Thanks.
Sir, if I could, I believe that Mr. Rousseau will speak to that.
To the chair, to Mayor Michaels, yes, we did to research that. The reason it's not in the report is because this is our principal machine that needs that will do all the heavy work. So if we are going to look at an alternate such as a hybrid or fully electric, because there are these models available, and I'll take you through that in a moment, members of the committee. So if you look, the reason that's not in the report is because we wanted to replace, of course, our heavy duty one, because in the fall we got to do fall cleanup again. The other one, as John mentioned, is also got about 4 or 5 years left when I talked to Lance this morning. So if you want to look at a hybrid approach, we want to go and talk to others as well. So I know Edson, Yellowhead has got the hybrid model. I actually saw it on the road yesterday morning. Sorry, John, did you want to?
I think that they may actually just have a straight diesel model, I believe. I don't think they have the hybrid model.
Okay, so thanks for that correction. However, we did talk to Rcmp today, and I believe some councillors also reached out to them, which was good. And they told us exactly the same, that there is a hybrid that is on the market, and in Canadian dollars, I'll just give you for the 4-wheeler. It is diesel electric hybrid, 660,000 Canadian. I know it's a huge sticker price, but just bear with me for a moment. If we go with a 3-wheel, there's only 60,000 difference, 600,000 Canadian. Now, when I talked to John this afternoon, we would prefer the 4-wheel. Now, I know there are granting opportunities as well out there with FCM, and Ash, who's at the back, our CET, has talked to FCM today. And so the criteria that they're looking for is something that's innovative, something that's never been tried before, and how will it change the game plan? And I think we fit that criteria with this. And how that grant works is that they would give you up to 500,000 or 50% of the eligible costs. So if you look at, let's just round the numbers down to 600,000, we could pay 300,000 for it, or the difference between what a diesel would cost, and then you'd be paying probably 295, 300, whatever. So there is an opportunity for us to research that and to apply for the grant. Doesn't mean if we apply for the grant and we get it and we don't make a decision like in the penalty box, but at least you know that you're in the lineup for that. We do need, though, from the province a support letter when you do that grant as well. But that's no biggie. We can get that to our MLA. So to Mayor Michael's question, yes, the 4-wheel, it travels at about 110 kilometers per hour when it's just scoot booting around. Of course, when you're doing sweeping operations, you go down to that 10, 20 clicks per hour. The capacity of the side dump, similar to what we have right now, is actually larger. We're at 4.5, they're at 5.2 cubes on the proposed diesel electric. So those options are there, but we are a little ways away to be able to say it can do the job for us equal to our Elgin, which is our heavy duty one. If we had to replace the mid-sized one, we could have said, you know what, we have the heavy duty, we don't have a problem right now. Let us go and be one of the first to drive the diesel electric. I think it shows good leadership, stewardship for the environment for us to go that route based on the knowledge we have, based on the investigation we've done. Sorry, John, did I miss anything?
I was just gonna say that grant, I'm not 100% sure if it covers the hybrids or only a completely electric vehicle. So there's that to consider. And that one is significantly more expensive than even the hybrid.
And that's-
Sorry, gentlemen, if I could, the price for the full electric. Get that?
Yeah. 860,000 Canadian.
Thank
Can I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, so just on that point, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this. If it were the will of council to go down that road to get a report, get that information, to consider that, would that have any timing impacts for the next season, or could we go down that path with little risk to be prepared for 2023?
If I may, Mr. Chair, to the committee, there would be an element of risk. One, how ready are these machines? They are not purchased off the shelf. When you order them, you get put in the lineup. Now, I'm not saying there's a large lineup from what we learned today. I think there's a level of caution, especially when it comes to the electric. When it comes to the hybrid, I think there may be, because it's still diesel and it's interchangeable. Driving a hybrid vehicle myself, I know what it does. You know, it does create less wear, it does create better efficiencies. Now, the electric, what's good about it is that they will actually train up our mechanics in there at their locations as part of the deal. So you may say, okay, how do we fix a hybrid machine or a fully electric? Our mechanics will be flown down south to Pasadena, spend a couple of days there, and they'll come back the better for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I do a follow-up?
Q.
I'm doing a follow-up on his electric.
Sorry.
Specific to his electrical topic.
Okay.
I'm sure before we go down the electrical path, we want to fully analyze the operating costs per hour and the amortization of over the total time, and the total use, and compare that to the diesel costs. At least pick something that is sort of in the ballpark. Is that what you're thinking?
Mr. Chair? Yeah,
You wouldn't pick something that's just twice as expensive without that kind of analysis.
without wanting to cut the conversation short, I think my preference right now is to get an updated report with different options that go down this path and kind of do a contrast. Maybe we end up with the same option here because electric is fairly new and the hybrid world is fairly new, but I just want to flesh out those options, what the operational costs are, and you amortize it over 25 years and see, and then we make that decision. Do we want to step into that game now, or do we want to, wait for the second unit in 5 years or 6 years or whatever? But let's have a more in-depth, options for that was my train of thought. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I have myself in queue, and then Councillor Reese, and then I have Councillor Burr and Councillor Taylor. So just to be transparent, I did reach out to.
No, sorry, I just wanted to get in the queue. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So I did, and I don't want to mention the company, but it was the only company that we knew at the time. I did reach out to them, and I guess one of my concerns possibly from that discussion, and I obviously realized the individual is working for a company, but it was stated potentially the unit that is proposed in the report could take quite some time before we could even get that one as well. Stating that they're not built, they have to be built. So it's get the chassis, get the unit, and they said the supply lines are drastically slowed down. And there was a mention of maybe possibly waiting 2 years, unfortunately, for what unit. Yeah, so whereas this unit, and again, I'm in favor of seeing other options. I'm not sure if the hybrid or diesel or electric or whatever is best. Knowing more a little bit about the FCM grant is also very important to that. But the turnaround that they stated was 90 days potentially. That because it's purpose built. They're built only for that purpose of sweeping streets and only that purpose. Whereas if we're purchasing what's proposed, we're purchasing something that could be used for something else. It's got to be put together. So I guess, that was a bit of a concern, especially with the state that this unit is in. If we have to wait longer, then that we're going to put the wear and tear in our smaller unit, unfortunately. So, so that's my only thought, and I don't know what comments you guys have on the amount of time that, has that been looked into with the unit that was proposed here, the newer one, with the Freightliner and,
Oh, you're talking about like the Elgin style?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, I've spoke with one of the suppliers in Central Alberta about it, and the timeline on that is for the rental returns, we can get into something like that potentially within a few months.
Hmm.
And now to get one brand new, it's being claimed probably late summer to early fall, but that's from the salesman, so we can tack on 3 months to that potentially or more too.
So if I may, I'm just gonna follow, so if a motion or direction was made, I'd like to see these options, to be honest with you. I think, this is, it seems like, not only for the environment, but also in the wear and tear. Sure, it might be a little bit more money, but I from what I've gathered from reading it too, we're gonna be saving quite a bit too, and potentially fuel costs. And my other understanding too is with the hybrid model too, that it's also a generator unit with the diesel part of it. So it's got a couple of applications. So if we have any need for a larger generator, I don't know where we're at in the state with our community, but it's also available to us as well. So I don't want to, again, make any specifics, but I think seeing other options would be great. So, thank you. Okay, Councillor Reese.
Thank you, sir. So listening to the mayor speak and you speak, now I have a new question. Why was this hybrid, this electric, not part of the report? We got 1, we got 2, and we got 1, 3, and then we got that used number 2 in the middle. But I'm not seeing this hybrid, this electric. So if it's so good, why was it not part of our report today?
The reason why I didn't initially look into it is because I wasn't really aware of electric sweeper options at the time. And I am familiar with the mechanical sweepers through a lot of experience in running them and operating inside them for about 15 or 20 years. So I just kind of stuck with what I knew was the industry standard at the time.
And I'd like just to add, is it Lance?
Yeah.
So if the decision was yours, you being a mechanic, you being the one who has to work on this, do you have a preference?
Not anything specific, but they are a high maintenance piece of machinery, and I don't think it matters what brand you buy. They're seasonal and they're a high maintenance piece of machinery. So at this point, because of all the struggles we're having with keeping this one running, I think even a used one or anything's better than what we got at this point. So,
So are you excited about the possibility of a hybrid? electrical?
absolutely, is learning something new and trying something new out for sure. It's definitely a viable option. Fully electric, I'm not so sure of, but I think probably a hybrid would be a wiser choice if we're going to go that route.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Councillor Kirsch.
So I guess my questions relate to timing. And so after we've done our spring cleanup for street sweepers, what do we use them for then?
So we continue with sweeping all year long. We just continuously make loops through the town. We're constantly sweeping. So generally what we do is we'll use the larger sweeper for that mostly. We'll just.
Which is the one we're talking about?
The one we're gonna replace. Yeah, the initial sweep up will use both sweepers, but we ideally use the larger sweeper just to continue all year sweeping shopping centers, service roads and residential as well. We just carry through to fall, picking up leaves, debris before, the freeze up in the winter hits. So like I said, it's running about 800 hours a year generally.
But we've had to flip that because the bigger.
Yeah,
older
well,
sweeper-
But here's the second part of my question. And like when I read the report, it sounds like silica's a deal, and like that information was available a long time ago. And I'm finding it interesting why this is coming now, middle of the year. Like we applied, the budget was finalized in February, and why wasn't this an item that we looked at as, because it sounds like this thing's tanked. And it must have been tanked in January, and it just, why now, given the big cleanup seasons in spring?
Through to the chair, to Councillor Bosch, thank you for bringing up that question. The reason why you did not see it on the budget, it was brought forward by the mechanic last year that it should be looked at for a 2022 consideration. So what happened with the silica, if you remember about August last year, we had a big OHS issue with it, with the silica dust. And then we put in a safe work practice that helped us so that you could still operate. Then we said, okay, in terms of the competing capital items that we had, what would have to give? So other than wasting everybody's time, we did a go, no go decision about capital items. So the street sweeper kind of just marginally fell down to a 23, replacement definite. And then we also, through the process between February when the machine was put in place, we had massive oil leaks. There was one time, John was telling me 6 liters per day. Lance fixed that to 2 liters per day now. Wherever it parks, you'll just see an oil splat. So we thought, okay, we still have the fall coming up. We also looked at maybe talking to Ledco because we also do highway sweeping. And so Ledco's cost, I forget what it was, John, was prohibitive. You could have put a good deposit down just for the period. So we thought, well, okay, we could replace this, like this is our standalone for the fall cleanup. Then we're not going to spend that $45,000 to $60,000 just to rent a machine. So we were trying to balance cost over the timing of when to purchase this. Now, was it a wise decision? When you look back and you say, well, we should probably have brought it forward. But that's hindsight to us now when we looked at all the pros and cons. And so we sat with the union, we looked at the options, how to mitigate our silica. And then when Lance showed us the flaws and everything else, so it's still operating as we speak, but we're nursing it so much that we don't want it to die completely.
Okay, thank you. And on the back of the queue.
All right, Councillor Taylor.
You kind of asked my first question, so I'll go to my second question. Similar to Councillor Your Honor, Michael's. My question is kind of similar. Except instead of asking for a machine that's twice as expensive, my question is, why can't we go for, if we're not using this thing that much, 300 hours per year, or even if it dumps to a little bit more, rather than spend $400,000 per year on it, and then watch 25 years later where it actually rots out on us. Why can't we go for a machine at $100,000 or $200,000 a year that's got half the time? Use that. Is that being costed out?
I know Kijiji has a few available there, ranging from $115,000 to $45,000. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just jumped in. My apology. The short answer, there's always options. The answer is not no, Councillor. It's just how much money do we want to dump into something that we don't have the history on? So for argument's sake, Lance can probably speak better to this, that if the engine on the one we purchased with 150 tanks tomorrow and we just bought it today, that's a 50,000 plus touch, plus his time, plus the waiting time. Now we're all without a machine. So that's the risk factor. But at the end of the day, we make the decision here as saying, okay, what is the best for the town? The other part of the machine that we didn't talk about, the back area, the stability of that is and the brooms that goes out and articulates, they're no longer having those pressures down. That's why I think it was when Michael's asked one day when he was driving behind, he says, why do we have to do several passes in a more efficient way? Well, the reason for that is that those brooms are no longer holding down as they should. So now we're doing 5, 6 passes, but the broom is kind of flapping, so to speak. So that could be the issue with the one we buy too. So there's a lot of unknowns. We do know what we have right now. And if we want to fix what we have, well, the parts are not really available. As Lance can speak to you, the window winder or the mechanism that normally cost you $80. He sourced it, they couldn't find it in Canada, no more parts available. That's the other problem. If it's very old. You got it in the States with courier cost and exchange rate was close to $800 for that window winder concept. So to me, I wouldn't put that into a vehicle that I own or an asset I own. So that's just why we brought this to council and all options on the table, Councilor Taylor. But it's just what is best for the town.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we don't do due diligence. I'm just saying there are a number of companies in town that if they were gonna use equipment at these rates.
Yeah.
They wouldn't go for the brand new option, they would go for a used option. And just because of the capital cost, they'd work out the operating, the amortization over a long period of time, and they would do whatever was best. They certainly would do due diligence on whatever the equipment was.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Taylor, ICO Hanlon.
I think maybe, John, did you?
I just wanted to speak a little bit to that point as well. It's not a lot of these units come up available while there's still viable options to be used. They usually get held onto. If they do come available, you'd have to move really swiftly and probably pay a significant premium to get one that's in a decent operational capacity. So it would be a little trickier in that way to get a hold of a used one as well.
So I think my comments have been covered
Okay.
already. Thank you.
Michaels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I put forward a direction, I have one question. Do we know offhand the cost of renting one and how quick we can get one?
So I spoke to Ledcor. They're the only company I could find that actually has availability for a rental. Now, renting a unit itself, we can't rent their unit, but we would contract with a driver. Now that is $200 an hour.
Okay. I won't go down that road right now.
So, sorry, there is rentals available, but generally, I think they're very limited and they're usually spoken for by larger municipalities, Calgary, and Edmonton, snatch them right up years in advance.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll put forward a direction, see where council stands. That committee direct administration. To bring back the replacement of town-owned sweeper report with additional options to a future committee of the whole meeting. If I may speak to that, Mr. Chair. So it sounds like our primary one is now our backup and we use our other one, but we don't want to abuse it. But we're actually in a decent situation and I think dealing with it now is I think we have some options for 2023. And this is a 25-year purchase. So to me, if we see all the options, electric, hybrid, other options, the FCM grant is a big component. We flesh this out. I actually think we're in an okay position to make a strategic, cost-effective choice for 2023. So to me, let's see a report in the next couple of months, if possible, to give direction on finalizing which one we want to be sweeping our streets for the next quarter of a century. To me, we should spend a bit of extra time really fleshing out all the options. So I appreciate the report. I see the sense of urgency to some extent with that one not being great, but I think we have a little bit of time considering it's our secondary unit and getting more information or administration being aware that potential rentals. And we have two municipal neighbors that are upgrading their units. So what are they doing with their old units? Potentially we look into that of, hey, before you sell it, can we get it for a year? If we run into a pitch where this unit here actually breaks down. So to me, I'll feel more comfortable having more options and we reconvene in the summer to see what we have. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Member Michaels, ICO Hanlon.
If I could, sir, and we around the community of the whole, and maybe Jen, if you could bring up the motion again. I'm wondering if council would, or excuse me, if the members would consider the removal of direct. And again, the intention of committee of the whole is not to provide direction, but could it be a matter of, I'm wondering about the wording on this. I understand what the committee is seeking here. had some questions the last couple of weeks come.
So if I may, I would just copy the words that was administration's recommendation was to committee direct administration.
Okay.
For
Sorry.
me, I won't die on that hill. I don't.
Yeah, no, I
Really done.
just want to.
Yeah.
And then if I could, sir, you'd mentioned that this is not our principal unit. And just to clarify, it is our principal unit. We've moved it to a secondary unit because it's not reliable at this time.
Yeah.
And lastly, my only concern is the timeline on something is if this is delayed to any extent this year, we will not hit next spring's window. Is just to clarify with council. So from an operational perspective, I understand the fall season, but it seems odd to be talking about next spring already, but we're probably 10 months away from when we would need it.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. If that's the case, then I guess this has to be a priority. For me, I can't support just what is presented today as our option if we move forward with the unit for the next 25 years. So if it has to be prioritized over other things and it has to come back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, so be it. But to me, again, I think there's an administration spoke to it. I think there's other options. And I understand why they brought this because it's a replacement of it and it's fair. And now we're giving different direction. Unless there's no appetite from council, we prioritize this and we make the right decision. So yeah, that's where I stand. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Michaels. I'll go to Mr. Russo.
Through to the chair, to the committee. When I look at all the options, you correct, Mr. Mayor, that we do need to, there are options available, like, I brought it out in this book. It's called the Road Runner for those of you that's familiar with it. This just came out, and the first time, and I subscribe to this, it's the first time we saw the fully electric one advertised. John reached out to Pasadena today, California, because this is the address we have there. Nobody got back to us. They don't, and then the same supplier we also talked to today, they all still trying to find their feet. So we can get through, and I know, John, you might kick me after this, but we can get through the fall through some options that John has already looked at. But for the spring we were very lucky this year, committee members, because the weather cooperated, the machine was limped along, and Lance used a very good strategy, arrested, force it out, get it fixed. So we do have options, but we can't leave it till late because supply chain is becoming greater and greater. But this is a big decision. It's a 25-year investment. So we would like to bring it back as soon as possible and to give John enough time to do the research, get back to the people, talk to Yellowhead, talk to it, so now they find the diesel version of what we talked about this afternoon. July the 26th is what I'm thinking about as a particular whole. That's what we will be aiming for. So, and that's me.
You're good? Okay. Councilor Taylor.
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of that. I like a range of options, right? Not just the super expensive electrical thing.
Yeah.
But see if we get even a cheaper, good quality one. We've got this one. We've got the hydroelectric, and if the whatever that what do you call it, the hydroelectric. But I mean, if that works out, and there's got to be analytics with these things, like the operating costs per hour, including amortization, like that, and each one compared in order to make a objective, not a qualitative assessment. We need an objective assessment of this.
Thank you. Councilor Taylor. I see your hand.
Thank you. And one of the items that does need to be acknowledged by the town is there are procurement laws that govern the purchase of this. This is a substantial purchase. So we actually do have to go out, and even though there's not a whole bunch of people that will sell this, we have to go out for proposals. It's just, we're bound by that. And so we have to go out, we have to seek proposals on this. So so the direction that council is seeking is vitally important here to make sure that when we craft that call, that we're asking the right thing. What are we asking for? Are we asking for diesel, hybrid, electric? What is it? And then to Member Taylor's comment, we can put all sorts of scores and conditions in there about what we're looking for in terms of budget, location, supplier, etc.
Thank you. I see your hand. I got myself in queue and then Councilor Reese. Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I appreciate the fact, this was a replacement, but I think this is a great opportunity to look at, not only, I think too, because, it was mentioned about 300 hours, it's actually normally 800 hours on this particular unit. It might also too, like if we make the right call, the right, on what we purchase next, might extend to that secondary one a little bit as well. Because I mean, we're looking at changing that, but if we do well at purchasing this primary unit. So I mean, I know the word has come out there, but I'm not in any favor of going cheaper in my mind for a unit like this. I think that, to get our bang for our buck and the years out of it, especially to the comments that you made on the unit that we have, there's so many moving parts to this thing as well that, to maintain the integrity of it and do the job that we need and don't have to do double the work, is really important. So I'm in favor of, and I want to see all the options as well for myself, whether it's diesel hybrid, fully electric, and absolutely. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Reese.
Thank you, sir. So to administration, how much money is in our fleet reserve?
John, you've got the exact number. I know it's over $1 million.
It's 1.5.
1.5 million has been set aside over years for this.
General fleet reserve is what it is.
Okay, so you know what? I've listened to everybody. Talk. I'm trying to be very objective. And my preference would be the option one, the 2-engine. I'm reading here. The capabilities of this unit allow for minimal passes and therefore improving street sweeping efficiencies. So if a used one coming in with 14,000 kilometers or whatever is going to last us 25 years. This one with 2 engines, do you think we might get more than 25 years out of it?
If I may, so the one we have is actually the same as that, just that would be the brand new version of the old 25-year-old sweeper we have. So we do currently have a twin engine model as well.
Okay, so I would not support this motion. I would like to see, if I could, option one and sell the one that might bring us in 80,000 to help us with the purchase price. Then over 25 years, we'll get some good road sweeping. So I would not support this motion.
Councilor Marsh?
I guess I will support it because I think we do need to have a look at this. And I go back to it and bring my my question up from earlier. Again, this is another situation where, geez, if you guys don't make this decision today, we're gonna get all up against the wall with timing. We're not gonna be able to get it. This spring season, this is actually the 3rd time we've had to readdress the budget that we just passed. And so now we've got another thing for 400 grand here that comes, and it seems to make sense for us not to have a look at what the options are at this point, as they would have been presented as a capital item at the end of the budgeting season. So this particular decision aside's one thing, but this constant needing to make a decision today or we're gonna run out of time, it's just, I find it really stressful. Comment.
I got myself and then Councillor Taylor. I'm going to support this, and I think it's another opportunity too, especially due to the fact that it could be a possible grant opportunity, and also the fact that the world is moving towards electricity. It's moving towards different versions, and if the town of Hinton can, get on board with some of the emissions. The reduction of those, I think it's a great opportunity for our community to go down that route. We've passed a motion and have a position specifically to manage our energy within, the collaboration between Jasper and Hinton. I think this would be right up the alley of that kind of stuff as well. So I think, again, there's definitely some wins, taking a look at those different options. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, on similar lines as Councillor Labarge. I sat through a council for 4 years where one particular department, not yours, by the way, would come through with these bright shiny pieces of equipment out of budget cycle. There'll always be a compelling reason for it. It would always be needed immediately. What we're getting faced with here, although everything seems to work out, so that even if we did go ahead with this purchase, is still an out of budget thing that could be predicted within the budget. I'd probably, at the time we purchase it, put a motion forward that we'd have to, whatever the dollar amount is, because we're not adding a new item, new major items in the out of a budget cycle. We would have to try to find it in the capital budget at the time. So I'm not in favor of doing out of budget cycle things if it's predictable. Thanks.
And if I may, as a chair, I mean, we heard from administration speak to that, and they were, took a look at that, but it didn't meet that criteria at the time. They started to limp it through, and now we're here. So, but I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it, but I think we just need to move forward with what we have now. So, council, any other comments or questions on the direction? None. So, Ms. Davey Campbell, if I could see that again, please. The committee direct administration to bring back the replacement of town-owned sweeper report with additional options to a future committee of whole meeting. If I may, before I go on, would you appreciate then a date on there, just because we do kind of want it back? Or I'm just looking at Councillor to Mayor Michaels or to administration.
I didn't want a date, and after hearing Mr. Russo say that they're going to try for July, I just don't want to handcuff them. They alluded to the importance of the timing, so they're going to bring it as fast as possible. That was my thought. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay.
Can I ask a point of order again? I don't quite understand. Like we're in a meeting where we discuss things, not make decisions. Why are we using the word direct?
Oh,
And that is something that's been brought to my attention the last couple of committee of the whole meetings. So I'm not quite sure how. Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Mayor Michaels. Oh,
would you like me, I'm just looking at the council procedure bylaw in regards to committee meetings and in regards to following motions, I'm just gonna put it up here.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
As
Section 5.412.
No, we're okay. 5412C.
Yeah.
So
if I may, we're not directing anything to the decision. We're directing you to bring back a report for
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
thanks for that.
that's
okay. All right. So if I can read back the motion again, or the direction, the committee direct administration to bring back the replacement of town-owned sweeper report with additional options to a future committee of the whole. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried 4-1. Thank you, council. Any other comments on this matter before we move on to 5.2? All right, so 5.2, Land Acknowledgement Working Committee Terms of Reference. ICO Hanlon. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Just if we maybe 30 seconds and got some staff that will leave here and then
see you guys.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks a
guys.
lot.
Bylaws.
Thank you. Thank you.
sir, we're just on page 22 of the committee's agenda package. And this is the Land Acknowledgement Working Committee Terms of Reference. And the author, Ms. Mark, is with us. And there we go, Heather. I'm going to have you take the committee through your item. Again, I'm on page 22 of your agenda packages.
Fantastic. Thank you, committee. Thank you, ICO Hanlon. So this terms of reference was drafted following the conversation that was held on April 12th at the committee of the whole meeting, the motion from the 19th of April from council regarding the creation of a terms of reference. The feedback generally being, from my understanding of the conversation, that Councillor Haas, pardon me, was interested in replicating the procedure from the Hinton Youth Advisory Council. So the composition will include members of administration as well as the councillors that are interested, with the expectation that we join to review the current statement in preparation for a statement that makes sense following the views, values, and vision of the current council. I will preface with that and open the floor for any conversation or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mark. Councillor Taylor.
Hi. I know from my work with the Pathway for the Park that the Provincial Government Aboriginal Consultations Office suggests that we consult with 4 nations that are not listed below. That's for a project that's right outside the town boundary. In fact, they only list 1 nation that we have in common here. I'm just wondering, why would the official provincial government Aboriginal consultation unit list different nations than the one that we have here? Is it that, I mean, I don't know the answer. Like, are these the ones that we use in our listing? Are they?
So point of clarification, Councillor Taylor, we're not here to discuss the actual land acknowledgement. We're actually here to talk about the terms of reference, to put together a group to discuss that very thing that you're speaking to right now.
Well, if I could respond to that.
Mhm.
I do believe that this is material because part of the direction that where it was, if you allow me to continue with this, where it was, this actually has a point.
Okay.
And where I was going to get with that point was that if there are different Aboriginal units around the province that are giving out different sets of advice,
Mhm.
and that's where I think it might be, then whoever this committee is, that maybe if we try to make the announcement a general announcement rather than specific nation announcement, we could end up with something that's more diverse, that's more succinct, and that is more correct. So I was hoping that that might help inform this committee. Okay, is that relevant?
I personally don't think it is. It's a terms of reference that, but it's the committee that.
Well, I might not be
That's
on
what
the committee, so I will, it's
No,
my chance to
just
help set the committee up.
Okay.
So that the committee can be successful. I think that's relevant.
Okay, council, any, I guess, further discussion on that, or what Councillor Taylor was mentioning? I'm gonna weigh in here. You know, as I brought this forward in the past, as I brought it forward in the past meeting, you know, I think it's just, and again, to administration, I appreciate the current one that we have, but I think it is just a little bit more of ownership of it. As a council, we do say this every meeting, you know, and have some input into it. And I know from other organizations, it is privy to make this
And
their
a point
own.
of order, you haven't ruled on you haven't ruled on whether you're going to allow me to ask this question.
Oh, my apologies.
Which question?
I guess, Ms. Marks, can you speak to that? Councillor Taylor's question about the different Aboriginal groups?
Thank you, Chair, through to Councillor Taylor. If I understand the question correctly, it could be the will of council at a future council meeting to add to the terms of reference a procedure section regarding consultation that the draft land acknowledgement statement could go through with different community groups to garner that feedback. I cannot speak to the procedure used provincially. Regarding the 4 different groups that are listed, I would just ask that we remember there are different representations across the province based on the territory that we're inhabiting. And within the community of Hinton, we know that statistically, a lot of the Indigenous representation here is non-status persons.
Okay, Councillor Taylor, does that answer your question?
I don't think so, but it's close to answering something like that.
Okay. All right, Councillor Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today we're looking at this land acknowledgement working committee terms of reference. That's what we're going to discuss right now. So if we move this to a regular council meeting, then we would put amendments in regards to what you're speaking to. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Does that make sense to you? At the meeting in chambers, then we can make amendments to this document.
Sure.
Does that make sense to all of you?
No, if I may, as chair, we can make amendments this evening as well. If there's something you wanted addition that would be probably the more appropriate is in this meeting so that it can be decided on it there. Because if we don't make the amendments here to do it in there, then we have to wait for it to come back again. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
I was just trying to support my fellow counselor here.
Mhm.
In what you're saying.
All right, Mayor Michaels?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on the composition. So it is regarding the terms of reference before it comes back to a regular meeting. 3.1.2 counselors appointed based on their desire to participate, and then the roles and responsibilities. So would everyone be on this committee, or they would just be able to provide feedback? I'm trying to understand the composition part a bit more. Thank you.
If I may, thank you for the question. 3.1.2 exists as it's currently worded simply because administration was not certain which council members would want to be on the committee, which would be open for discussion at this committee meeting today. And then regarding the roles and responsibilities for councillors under 4.1 and its preceding clauses, that can be adjusted regarding the final outcome for what this working committee will look like according to council.
Thank you for that, Ms. Mark. And Mr. Chair, I guess I'll wait to see what the rest of council thinks. Under section 3, I would like for us to determine the amount of members are in the group. Let's say it's 2. And then I do like section 4 a lot, where all the councillors can provide feedback and information. That alludes to Councillor Taylor's point that then there would be a process to say, hey, please consider this. So I really like that part a lot. And I'm happy with 2. I don't know, I won't die on that hill if people really want 3, but I think 2 members can handle this would be my thought. And I'll put forward an amendment, or somebody else can if there's appetite from council. Thank you.
Put my hand up, it's me. I'm next in queue here, but I would be in favor of that too. I think if we could narrow it down, then I think 2 is a reasonable amount, and typically these are types of committees where, the mayor would appoint them, and usually as councilors, we may put in requests, hey, I'd like to be part of this, and then the mayor would then be part of that. So I would like to see that part of that amendment as well. Thank you, Mayor Michaels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move to amend the Land Acknowledgement Working Committee Terms of Reference, section 3.1.2. to indicate 2 councillors and 1 alternate.
You can just see it when you're ready.
Section.
Terms of reference,
Just
Under,
or just
sections is,
this
or section 3, yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
I already spoke a bit to it. I didn't want to put specifically for me to recommend them. Our procedural bylaw says the mayor recommends them, and I'm a big believer that council should decide who those members are. A recommendation is just by the mayor, but we should, and I always encourage debate and challenges on that stuff. So for me, I'll recommend 2, and then we have a discussion. And I do encourage, as always, and it's just a reminder, please reach out to me, as I'll reach out to every member of council with the appetite to want to sit on this committee, and then I'll make my recommendations accordingly when it comes to a regular meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, council, so we have an amendment. Any comments, questions about it? Councilor Race?
Thank you, sir. I don't want to go home and think about this and have a discussion with myself. we're at committee of a whole. Do we give direction to administration to amend the following? I noticed you said, I'd like to move, and I'm so familiar with moving at a regular council meeting.
Mr. Chair, for me personally, I think this is something we discussed at our mutual performance. I don't personally want to deal with the legislative part here. If our leg assistant wants to give input, sure. But for me, it's administration's call on the wording.
Yeah, if nobody's concerned, I'm fine. I would support this.
Councilor Race, anyone else speak to this? ICO Hanlon?
Yeah, if I could, to the discussion legislatively, this matter still returns to council for direction, for final acceptance and adoption. So what we do see here is clarification on the expectations of the committee when it comes forward and it comes back to council. So I kind of stirred it up earlier, so I apologize for that. The action, the direction will come when this comes back to council.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councilor Verge?
So I have a question, and I put this out to my fellow councilors because when this was discussed before, part of the problem was that there wasn't ownership of the final product. So 4.1.4 says we're going to have a bunch of discussion and then administration will write a. So I guess that's my, do you want to pop the word draft in there? Is this something that's just going to be produced and here's your new one and now this is what you guys read out at your meeting? Or is there a supplemental decision that, yeah, I wasn't on the committee, but sure, I own that?
So if I may, Councilor Birch, it's a great question. If we could just do this amendment first, and then if we could speak to that one, that'd be great, because
Okay.
I'd like to talk and speak to that for sure,
Okay.
but it's a great question. So if we can do that.
I rescind my question at this point.
No, that's
Mr. Chair.
okay. It's just, it's not to the amendment, that's
Yeah,
all.
no,
So,
you're right.
anything else on the amendment? Okay, so if I can see that one more time, I'll read it. All right, so to amend land acknowledgement working committee terms of reference section 3.1.2 to indicate 2 counselors and 1 alternate. Council? All those in favor? All right, and that's carried unanimously. All right, so back to Councilor Verge's question.
4.1.4. Just to clarify the process here, I think that isn't, that's not the way I'd like to see it be done. I think that the large group probably wants to have that discussion.
Okay. So if I may speak to it, I'm not against that, but I'm looking at the process we used at the youth council and what administration did with us, and they pulled from all of the members some importance of what would they like to see in it. And then administration went away with all of that and brought it all into a statement, and then brought it to us and I found it actually quite good. I think that process was great. However, again, if this committee would like to be that person, that whole unit that writes it, I'm not against that either at all. But through the process that I'm familiar with, and it captured everything that was presented to them. But rest of council, Mayor Michaels, I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support amending this to indicate that administration will work on the draft and council will approve it at a regular meeting of council. Just to have, we're the ones who communicate with the community also. We get a second set of eyes and feedback and we finally approve it. So to me, empower administration to go work on the draft and let's bring it to regulars. So it's part of the process is like anything else to finalize it. Yeah. So if there's an amendment to 4.1.4, I would gladly support that. Thank you.
Councilor Marsh?
I'll direct, suggest, beg administration to amend 4.1.4, please. And to add the word draft between revised and land.
Friendly change to that. the end of that, you want to put then and for
No,
later
no, no.
approval by.
Not
count- No, it's right.
I'm letting her catch it.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then after the word council at the end, Jen, for approval at a regular council meeting.
Okay. So, and if I can speak, do you want to speak to it or do you have?
Sure. I mean, I heard from people that the problem with what we had is it wasn't ours, that there were nations mentioned there that for a person who's been in this community for near 60 years, never heard of. This was the discussion that we had. I just think it's important that that be the result.
Okay, thank you, Councilor LaBarge. And then myself, and I guess I apologize, I guess that is obviously more specific. I guess I assumed that that would be in the process in any way, that anything that does come, it usually comes for our approval, but I appreciate, you know, the clarification on that. So I'm in support of this as well. Anyone else on this amendment? Okay. Jen, thank you. Council recommend to amend 4.1.4, empower administration to craft a revised draft land acknowledgement statement reflective of the desires of council and for approval of a regular council meeting. Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, council, any other conversation about? Yes.
I'll move the recommended action. The council committee recommend council establish the land acknowledgement working committee as presented. As amended, sorry, as amended, thank you. By the draft land acknowledgement working committee terms of reference and direct administration to bring this item to the May 17th, 2022 regular council meeting for decision.
Okay, if I remember, are you just looking at number two and then just add to do it May 17th instead? Direct administration to amend the terms of references and return the item?
Correct, my apologies.
Sorry,
So
yeah,
option 2 with the date reflecting of May 17th.
thank you, Mayor Michaels.
If I may speak to it?
Yeah.
I think we had good discussion about this. It's going to fit a great process. And I think the changes are small enough to bring it back on the 17th, which was the original recommendation, unless the amendments were so huge that they need more time. So I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. All right, council, do you have a direction? Any comments, questions? And we'll call that the question then. That committee recommend council establish the land acknowledgement working committee as amended by the drafted land acknowledgement working committee terms of reference and direct administration to bring this item to the May 17th, 2022 regular council meeting for decision. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Any other comments or questions on 5.2? All right.
Thank you, Ms. Mark.
Thank you, Ms. Mark.
Thank you.
Can I have a quick biological break?
Sure, we'll take
It's going to be more than 3 minutes.
we'll take 5 minutes. We'll start with Councilor Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week I attended the Red Dress event at the Friendship Center. It was an excellent turnout. Everybody was given a free red hoodie. There were drummers, there was food, there was very good conversation. A little kid said to me, why all the red dresses, why red? And to go to our people and ask them why red was really, really interesting. I was able to volunteer 2 times at the Guild. They had a dance summit was being held. We had over 100 dancers from all over the provinces attended that weekend. Also, last night I attended an ASH meeting. And the discussion basically was all around our planning for 2022 and 2023. And big thing I have to report is on Friday, I was very fortunate to be a Canadian or a counselor who was able to attend the Civilitas Masterclass workshop. And the question that they asked at that workshop is, what does incivility mean to you? And they asked the question to the lawyer who was there. And she gave this long answer. And then Dr. Gordon McIntosh, he spoke, and he said, incivility is lack of respect. And so the masterclass shop or the event that I was at was Civilitas, respectful leadership in local government. It was awesome. Over 182 people from all over Canada were part of that. There were CAOs, there were councillors, there were Indigenous leaders. It was super. They broke us up into small groups where we were able to talk. Dr. Gordon McIntosh, he is so talented, such a good facilitator, extremely knowledgeable in municipal politics. He said honesty and respect at the table in council is so important. He said honesty and respect goes a long way in creating strong relationships and strong, safe working environments. If people feel beat down, if there's no trust, if it's been eroded, you're going to be hard pressed to get some work. Also talked about the different types of people that all of us are going to be fortunate enough to work with. And he said it's so important to get to know these people, like why they think, how they think, why they do what they do. It really will make our jobs easier if we know who we're working with. So if I could attend a session like that every month, I would be blessed. It just, and I will say to you, my fellow councillors, I will try my hardest to get to know you, to work with you, so we have a successful council. So that was my week. It was great.
Councilor Hort?
Thanks. Well, I guess last week my HRC meeting was canceled, so I have little to report except I haven't been to live music in a long time. So tomorrow is Chris Stapleton and Elgin, so we dance my butt off on Wednesday.
Thank you, Councilor Hort. Mayor Michaels?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Only thing, I was able to MC or announce the Bridges Trivia Night. Councillor Haas was there, not part of the winning team. There was a team who ran away with it by a lot, but great night, great organization. It was, I encourage council to potentially attend the one they're going to do in the fall. So, and that's it for this week. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Taylor?
The Rotary Club did their highway cleanup last week. I noticed that, and thank you to the Rotary Club for the excellent work they do in town. And then I was at the Ukrainian fundraiser, and there was a crowd of 30-ish people there. They were raising money for medical supplies. So good on the movies and the people that organized that, the volunteers that were there. And then next weekend we have coming up with 2 sessions with the Pathway for the Park at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, depending which one you might want to go to. There's one at the Legion in the basement on Wednesday, and there's another one at the Folding Mountain Brewery. People up there, so it'd be an exciting chance to get updated.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Is that all?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. And for myself, yeah, I've had a great time at the Bridges. I've come in third. but not the booby prize. There is a booby prize, but come in third there. It was a lot of fun. And Mayor Michaels did a great job. Man, some of those questions, though, it's hard enough to answer them, let alone pronounce some of them as well. So great job on that, though. And it was a great turnout. I think there was what, six, 7 teams, something like that. So yeah, so I think, you know, if we can try to get a team in there next year, that'd be great. So just to highlight too, I had no committees this week, but on Saturday, the museum is going to have their 5th anniversary celebration. So I'm going to be attending that. It's from 1 to 4. So I have an opportunity to go to that. And then next week, on the 18th, I mentioned it last week, but it's now out there. The Candlelight Vigil is happening on the 18th. And it's for the National Victims and Survivors of Crime Week. And there'll be the vigil, there'll be a number of people speaking at it as well. And some other, I think MAD organization will be there. So it's going to be a big event at the Green Square. So if you can make that, that'd be great. Yeah, that's all I have to report as well. So, all right. Now on to Chief Administrative Officer reporting.
Thank you, sir. I think just out of last week's council meeting, I'm pleased to announce that I've had some very productive preliminary meetings regarding some economic development opportunities. As council, as committee will recall, we did confirm the remaining budget in the 2022 operating budget for economic development initiatives, and so have met with a couple of groups, and some really great ideas are coming in. As a reminder to the committee, those will come back to council. I'm hoping actually as soon as next week to have some of those back before council with some recommendations from administration. And so it's great to see some of our partners bringing some ideas forward, and I look forward to bringing those to council hopefully next week. I'm still waiting to see them hit my in basket. Just get through here. So very excited to confirm that May 26th, we will be, and I've mentioned this before, but the town of Hinton is committed to a psychologically safe health and safety workplace. And so we are working with a external agent to prepare a plan for the psychological safety of all of our staff, and we'll be kicking that off. And council, I believe, should be seeing an invitation starting on May 26th. We've got a breakfast at the Hinton Center, and so pancake breakfast, that's good for your mental health. Bacon's good for your mental health. It's good for my mental health, at least. And then that moves into a 9 o'clock session with our contractor. Dr. Bill Mowat will be taking us through, and this will be the launch of our initiative around the psychological health and safety in the organization. And this is not unusual. Increasingly, our workplaces, if they've not already committed to the health and safety and the mental wellness of their workforce, they're doing it, and that's what we are doing at this time. It's been very well received it's been identified through a survey as necessary, and the preliminary steps through our staff have been well received. So I'm excited to be rolling this out, and I look forward to that on the 26th. Council, I believe just before the weekend, would have received the draft of the strategic planning session item. Just a reminder, please get those comments back and I'll forward those on to the contractor. We are working on a tactical planning date to confirm that and work with council on that as well. They're just looking for those comments back, hopefully this week. Did want to confirm that that I'll be working with administration this week. Winston doesn't know it yet, but we'll be working with him to confirm a meeting date with West Fraser. And so we have a commitment to work with them on 2 items of mutual interest between our parties. And that is going to lead to a 1 or 2 day session to try and get a new agreement in place and moving forward. Of course, before any agreement is in place, that'll come back to council, of course, for your final review. But that is moving forward, and I appreciate their patience so far. I did want to update council. I've had some inquiries regarding some recruitments. So 3 recruitments. There's an important Parks and Rec recruitment that we're in the middle of right now. I can share that we had over 40 applicants for that position. So a lot of very strong applicants. They did shortlist 4, and they are in the midst of interviewing 4 individuals this week. And it is the hope that they'll be able to extend an offer to one of those individuals, hopefully before the end of the week. The second one is the ledge clerk. Similarly, we are working on this one and working with 4 candidates that we've moved to a second round of interviews with. And those are actually tomorrow and Thursday, that the second round of interviews will proceed with that. And the third of interest is the Director of Finance, and that position is currently out to market, and we're waiting. And I don't have an update for you at this time in terms of the number of applications we've received yet, but it remains open at this time. So, sir, that's my report. Thank you.
So, okay, Councilor Reese.
Thank you, sir. You had indicated a while back that you would be part of the hiring process, or you wanted to. So will you be active with the all 3 of these, like taking a look at them?
I will be directly involved in 2 of them. I am involved in the third, and I will be involved in the decision on all 3.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Reese. Any other questions for ICO Hanlon? Okay, excellent. Thank you, ICO Hanlon. That moves us then to one item in our closed session. So if I could have a motion or direction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move to go into closed session.
All right, moving to closed session. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Have a couple minutes to transition when we get started.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of council at 6:33. Council, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Reis.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for a special council meeting, May 10th, 2022.
Thank you, Councilor Reis. Council, any debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. We have 2 items tonight. 3.1, Gerard, Redmond Community Catholic School Crosswalk Safety, ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to hand this off to our Director of Protective Services, our Fire Chief. We're on page 2 of 11 of your agenda package. Mac, do you want to take council through this? This is the Gerard Redmond Community Catholic School Crosswalk Safety Improvements.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Through the chair to all of council, this report is returning to council for a decision. We heard from a delegation of the Parents Advisory Committee request for additional lighting and change of lighting at the Father Redmond School at the crosswalks there at Mountain and Malign. And there's very little change to this report other than we did take the advice of council, and we looked at the using highly reflective paint and also changing the lights out to more visible and higher tech, I guess, LED lighting. And it changed the cost of the project by $15,000, and it is now reflects in the report as $95,000. It's important to note, though, that the existing lights at Mountain and Malign can be reused at a different location if the need arises. And so we do not lose that investment in that little bit of infrastructure. So yes, it can be reused elsewhere in town. The cost of the project is proposed of $95,000 is proposed to be funded from the ATE reserves. So administration is recommending option number 1, which I'll just scroll down to that. The council approved the adding lighting crosswalk infrastructure at the Gerard Redmond Community Catholic School to the 2022 capital plan, and that the funding of $95,000 be taken from the ATE reserve. And if council has any questions regarding the report, I would be happy to attempt to answer those.
Thank you, Mac, for that. And administration, I have Councillor Hawes and Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mac, I guess I just need a clarification because I'm looking at the quote on page 6 from Can Traffic. And the grand total down there is $198,773.93. But we're approving 95. Help me out there, please.
Yes. Through the chair to Councillor Hawes. That's a very good question. In our rush to get this report together, the wrong quote was attached to this report. The correct report does reflect 15,000 for the additional work, and it does total $80,000. John had done some legwork and had actually 2 quotes given, and he sent the wrong one in for council here. But there is a portion of that existing quote for around $14,900 and some dollars. So that would be reflective of the additional work.
And so that's the relocating existing RRFB systems at Mount Street. Is that what you're referring to there? The $14,753?
Correct. And upgrading it to LED lighting.
Okay.
Okay. Hawes, anything
No.
else?
Yeah, that's okay then. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm probably repeating what Councillor Hawes has asked you. But that 95, is that the overhead lights at Gerard, the high-vis crosswalk, high-vis poles, or poles wrapped in high-vis, and the lights on Mountain and Moline?
Through the chair to Councillor, yes, that is correct. It includes the repainting of the crosswalks, both crosswalks, the painting over of the old crosswalk on Mountain and Malign, relocating the lights at Mountain and Malign to the other side of the street and upgrading them to LED, and the additional, not articulating, I'm trying to think of the word, the crosswalk lighting right in front of the school on Malign. And that would also be LED lighted.
Quick follow-up, sir. So is it the reflective crosswalks, both Mountain Street and Moline and at Gerard?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
ICO Hanlon.
Sorry if I could, sir, through to Mac. Mac, I want to be clear, because the attachment does confuse me as well.
Yeah.
I do appreciate and I understand we discussed moving or improving these to the LED lighting. But our proposal, our recommendation, and let me just get back to that, that's seeking funding in the amount of $95,000. That does not include overhead lighting on Mountain. That's additional.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, I just, because I wasn't sure the Councillor Race.
But it does include upgrading it to LED lighting.
Correct. Overhead lighting, if we wanted to do overhead lighting on Mountain, would have been an additional, or is an additional $84,000, yes.
Councillor Race.
No, but are we moving the lights from the west side of Mountain and Moline to the east side as part of that 95?
Mac, the question, I think it's backwards. I think it's moving from the east side of the intersection to the west side.
West to east. Mac, could
Through the
you?
chair, that is correct.
Yeah, isn't it on the west side right now?
Yeah, that's correct. Correct. Currently, they're on the east side, and they would go on the west side, which is the side of where the school is.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Councillor Hawes.
Okay, I thought I was walking by it every day and I'd lost my mind for a second, so, okay.
East.
Oh, right.
So I'd like to make a direction that council approve adding lighted crosswalk infrastructure at the Gerard Redmond Community Catholic School to the 2022 capital plan, and the funding, the 95,000 be from the AT reserve fund. Just to clarify, do we need to add in the mountain and move of the crosswalk there as well? Because this just says to the Gerard Redmond Community Catholic School. Or does that include that project?
If I could, sir, it includes that project as detailed in the
Okay.
report.
Okay, no, that's fine, as long as we don't have to specify it. So I so moved, or to make that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a direction on the floor. Any debate or questions? Councillor Taylor.
I only ask it because I see it's in the agenda, it's in the information package. The 30 kilometers per hour not being on Mountain Street. Could you comment on that, Mac?
Through the chair to Councillor Taylor, yes, the speed limit on Mountain does not get reduced to 30 kilometers an hour at this time. It's not part of the school zone. It's just outside of the school zone.
Okay.
That would be something to consider if we ever change the traffic act or our traffic bylaw. And we change speed limits in town in any areas. That would be one that I would recommend in the future that we reduce the speed limit at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Mac. Council, any questions, debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council approved adding lighted crosswalk infrastructure at the Gerard Redmond Community Catholic School to the 2022 capital plan, and that the funding 95,000 be from the ATE reserve fund. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any further questions or directions for this action item? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our last item, corrections, approved 2022 operating budget, ICO Hamlin.
Thank you, sir, through you to the members of the committee. Speaking to page 8 of 11 of your council or of your committee agenda package. This is our opportunity to correct the approved 2022 operating budget. It is the recommended actions are fairly complicated. I would like to read them into the record entirely. That the first being that council rescind Town of Hinton motion MD-2484 reading that committee direct administration to reduce reserves by $260,000 and to apply these savings to a reduced 2022 tax rate. Number 2, that council approves the amendments as detailed below and as shown in table 1 of this report, totaling changes in the amount of $220,600 to the 2022 operating budget and 2023-2025 operating plan as was adopted by the town of Hinton on March 1st, 2022. There are 8 lines, the first being reduction of Bhutan lands to venture 2022 budget, a reduction of $55,000. Removal to a future year potentially of the 2022 Rcmp bylaw study of $60,000, a reduction. Removal or reallocation to a future year. Sorry, when I say removal, I just want to be clear. It's contingent on council's direction in future years. Removal of 2022 LiDAR aerial photography program, $30,000. Removal of 2022 overseeding program, $15,000. Removal of 2022 bill pay consolidation program, $11,100. Removal of 2022 wildflower beautification program, a reduction of $10,000. And then there are budget reductions provided from the Development and Infrastructure Department totaling approximately $25,000, and budget reductions from Community and Protective Services Department totaling $14,500. That is the second motion. The third, that council direct administration to reduce the town of Hinton's 2022 accumulated surplus by $274,400 and to direct these accumulated surplus funds to the 2022 property tax revenue account to reduce the 2022 tax rate. Those are, sir, the recommended actions. Very quickly, in terms of background, at the May 3rd meeting of council, administration had indicated that there was a $195,000 identified shortfall, and that was the understanding of administration at that time. It's reflected in the motion that reads the council direct administration to review the adopted 2022 operating budget and identify potential revenue increases and expenditure reductions totaling a minimum of at least $195,000 in increased revenues for the adopted 2022 operating budget and 2025 operating plan as was adopted by the town of Hinton. Previously, we had approved the budget. That was March 1st. The operating budget was initially approved. And as part of that, the Committee of the Whole had directed administration to reduce the reserves by $260,000 and apply those savings towards the 2022 tax rate. Since the May 3rd council meeting, unfortunately, administration has now, administration has now completed the transfer of the approved 2022 operating budget into the town's budget computer program. That is the Bellamy program that was completed May 5th. Through this final transfer of numbers, there was a final problem identified in the 2022 operating budget. A grant award, a revenue amount of $37,917 was incorrectly entered into the budget twice. Unfortunately, when you increased revenues that weren't there, that essentially meant we had to make up that $37,917. So if you take the original $195,000, you add the $37,917, that's where we come up with the number we're discussing tonight, which is the $232,917 amount. Once again, my apologies to council for the problem in that number. Administration, at the direction of council, remains committed to the ±1% tax rate increase. That's understood and is remained. I would like to, at this point, I'm going to try this. Jen, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to see if I can. So what I'd like to do with council at this time is I've simply, and this speaks to the items I had in proposed motion number 2. And this gives you a breakdown of how the reductions affect that $235,000 amount that we're seeking to deal with here. And you see all of these items here. So in the red, you see the potential reductions or savings, and you see what that's related to. On the right, you will see the impacts, and you'll see how we kind of come down to essentially zeroing out. I want to have a chance to go through this with council. It's very interactive. We can change numbers, we can add, we can delete. Essentially, what you see here, as I mentioned earlier, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers that administration presents to council as options to get us much closer to balancing the approved budget. These 8 numbers resulted in the bottom, you see this number of $14,400. That's still a shortfall. So even with everything I discussed earlier, there was still an additional $14,400. And as you'll notice here, you'll see, and hence the rescinding of the previous motion. So if the committee, if council were to agree to these changes in the approved budget, that initial $260,000 transfer from the accumulated surplus would actually have to be increased to $274,400. And I'm going to just come back here. So at this time, administration or I would like to just go through and poll the members of council on these proposed 8 changes. And if you will, and I'll just show council how this potentially could work. So for argument's sake, I'm going to pick something I hope is fairly innocuous. Bill pay consolidation. So if council were to indicate, no, we'd like to keep that in. If I were to delete that, you would see it would adjust as follows. So if that were deleted, it would now mean we increase the necessary transfer of the accumulated surplus by 25,005 with nothing else changing, by 25,500, which would mean we would increase the necessary transfer from accumulated surplus to 285,500. Now I have included in this spreadsheet, and I'm going to come back here and what did I just take out? 11,100. Thank you.
100.
Yeah, 11,100. So, sir, I'm not sure if you want to go line by line. These are 8 proposals, and this is administrative, and so I don't wish to presume. And actually, I would like to read a little something I did put into here, which was philosophically, administration reviewed all of our 2022 operating business cases, and that is to see if they all remain necessary at this time, and considering the requirement to balance the 2022 budget and additional budget reductions from the planning and infrastructure and community and protective services areas. So essentially I went to everybody and I said, listen, where are we at on some of these, and are they a go? Have you bought anything? Have we tendered anything? Are you going to get it done this year? And if I had individuals look at me and said, well, I don't think so, that was all I needed to hear. Okay, well, I'm going to at least take that to council. So right now I'm simply looking for the will of council on these 8 items, and I'm prepared to kind of, I believe the development and infrastructure and the community and protective services reductions, maybe I'm going to work bottom to top if you don't mind. The directors in these areas have been great. They went through their budgets again. They're an assemblage of many minor budget reductions, and they are presented, and you see on the right side, with minimal service level impacts. So we're not talking anything that's going to be substantive service level impacts, and we're not talking anything about service level eliminations. So that's kind of where those 2 are at. And then maybe if we were to start at the top here, so
what I'll do, ICO Hanlon, I'll park that momentarily. I have 3 people in the queue.
okay, thank you.
I'll see if there's anything that maybe supersedes this that might we might want to discuss first, and then we can return back to this process if that's the will of council. So I'll park it and we'll come back to that. I have Councillor Taylor, LaBerge, and Race.
I love your procedure. That could get us through this really quick. I just like to add an item to your list. And the item I would like to add is the Public Works lead hand for a total of $8,500.
So if I could, anticipating that, so for instance, if I were to put 8,500 here, just as an example, it does allow us to, so that's what would happen. You would see a reduction in, so that's something that we could certainly add to any motion of council here tonight. So
yeah, and again, the Public Works lead hand, it's not a full-time position, but it was the upgrade of a position, and it actually really steepened the supervision triangle in the department. So you have 5 members, you have 5 guys. Now you've got an extra supervisor in there, so you're a supervisor for 3 guys, which I was never in favor of in the start. I think this is a perfect opportunity to add it to the mix. Maybe you vote against it, so be it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LaBerge.
No, my question is relating to these items, so we'll step through them as we
And
go.
Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we go down a little bit
oh,
or go up or
up.
just, yes. So the Bhutan lands debenture, is that our initial purchase of those lands, or is it what we did just last week?
No, actually this was, so Ruth and Shelby were able to confirm that when we did the budget, we were a little uncertain how much it was going to cost in 2022. And so at the direction of council last meeting, we took a look at that number, and we now know pretty much exactly what the amount's going to be this year, which has allowed us, and again, we're not paying for an entire year, we're paying for half a year in 2022. So that allowed us to make that $55,000 reduction in the debenture payment. So it doesn't change anything that council's already approved. We just are we're able to better account for it now.
So that's at 820,000.
It's the payment in 2022 of that amount. We had initially much more in, and I'm gonna think it was because they thought there was a possibility of a full year's payment. Well, we're actually gonna only have a half year's payment, so we now know how much it's gonna be and we're able to reduce it.
Okay, so sensing that there's some appetite to go through this and just yay or nay sort of each item. Did you want to start at the bottom or at the top, ICO Hamlet?
I'm, however you wish to proceed,
So
sir.
you had recommended, what was your preference?
I had them, initially I had them highest to lowest with the administrative reductions at the bottom. So I would suggest maybe the highest to lowest. So
Highest.
the RCMP bylaws study was one that we brought forward, and the rationale for us bringing this forward, and I respect that it was a council initiative, was a bit of uncertainty about what's going to happen with the provincial police force and how that might affect such a study. We haven't tendered it yet, and so we're not committed to anybody at this time, and it's one that we've brought forward. We generally tried to stay away from council's business plans, but this one is definitely a council business plan that was presented in the budget.
Okay, thank you for that, ICO Hanlon. So council will be starting with RCMP bylaws study. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm a bit struggling with this one because to the idea that we don't know what's happening with the possible provincial, I see that personally as a benefit if we were to have that study ahead of time, because we don't know what that's going to look like, whether or not we have enough officers, how is it going to be, you know, if that were to come to fruition, and to have this study already in place may benefit us to a certain degree moving forward if that does come to fruition. But the other side of it too is if it doesn't, then having this study also can help us to gather data to, you know, are we providing too much RCMP, too much bylaw, are we providing? So I guess I'm struggling with this because it did hit the top of the list, you know, when we did it through the budget process. And I'm seeing a lot of wins potentially with this one. You know, so I'll look forward to hear from the rest of the council on it, but I'm a bit not certain on this one for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor LeBert.
My perspective is this is a perfect place to save money. Doing another study for $60,000 right now, given we have to find this money somewhere. I think this is a reasonable thing to move forward, and just my thought.
Thank you, Councillor LeBert. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to either delay it to the future or even to not do it. To my way of thinking, this is an in-house thing that doesn't need $60,000. We've got all the information we need to do it anyway, so I vote in favor of delaying it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm going to vote in favor of removing it, and the other reason too is having our strategic plan, and we're going to be looking at policies. It does touch upon it a bit, so albeit I get the premise of wanting to do this, but I think in conjunction with the uncertainty, and we're going to look at all of our policies, there might be some overlap, so I'll be supporting removing this. Councillor Haas.
Just to clarify, when you say you mean services, right?
Service level. My
Okay,
apologies.
just to- yeah. And I don't disagree with that. I think it can wait, and I think it probably will get under the services somewhat for sure, especially the bylaw part. I'm not sure if the RCMP part, but the bylaw part for sure. But I do caution though, I don't, to the comment we could do this in-house, I don't believe we could personally. We've already heard that in our strat plan that it's sometimes better to have it outside, you know, person doing such a study like this. It's less biased, it gathers better data. So, but I'm okay with, because we are doing that service level, I agree with that. So yeah, I'd be in favor of keeping this then.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Race.
I would be in favor of removing, in knowing that we are deferring it. We're not stopping it, we're deferring. So I would be in favor of removing 60,000 right now.
Thank you, Councillor Race. So I'm going to seek consensus to remove it, and then we'll vote at the end like we did in other budget processes.
Not
Well, not to remove it, correct? And then we'll gather up all the totals at the end and then give the appropriate direction if that's the will of council. So I'll seek consensus to keep it as it is right now, of the $60,000 amount to be deferred to a future year.
Voting to defer.
To defer. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. So we'll move on to the second item, Bhutan Lands debenture. ICO Hanlon, did you want to give a brief comment regarding that prior to our discussion?
I guess just again, a matter of being able to better account for it this year. So we're now very confident with this number. So it's allowed us to reduce what was initially budgeted for an entire year at say 55,000.
Yay.
Okay. Yeah, so council, I'm sensing the results for this, so I'll seek consensus to keep the Bhutan Lands debenture reduction of 55,000 to reflect the actual 2022 cost. Council, all those in favor? So that's passed unanimously. That'll bring us to the LiDAR aerial photography. ICO Hanlon, any quick comment regarding that?
So quickly, sir, through you to council, a reminder that this is the first of a multiple year investment in securing LiDAR. At this point, we're just proposing to defer the initial launch by 1 year. We haven't spent any money. We haven't signed any contracts. We aren't contractually obligated for anything this year. So it's one that we could certainly, and from a workload perspective, this is one that administration is prepared to see deferred to a future year.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Hawes.
Yes, thank you. And I get that. I guess I just want to ask the question because I go back to our strategic plan. We talked a lot about economic development in our community and development and things like that. And if I recall this conversation, that this was an advantage to us in the future to have those photography to entice to have it on the website, have, you know, for potential development happening in our community. So I guess deferring it another year, what's the disadvantages of doing that and the risks to that? Just
ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. If I could, Ms. Weber, Debbie, could you speak to Councillor Hawes's question, or if necessary, I can repeat that for you.
Hello, good evening. I hope you can hear me. I'm very sick, so I'm sorry if I'm not easy to understand. So for the LiDAR and aerial photography, it is just, we were going to put money away annually for an expenditure every 5 years to update our aerial imagery for the town. And so when this was discussed at the budget sessions, it was discussed in the context that a lot of developers and realtors and people looking to come to our community look at our aerial imagery on Unisite and look at different components of the community. For the developers, they can turn on contours, and it's an important property investment and land searching capability for people to look at our community. So that's why we were talking about it being important for economic development. Deferring this gathering of funding, because it's about $100,000 to $150,000 each time that we update the aerial imagery for the town, plus LiDAR, which is a 3-dimensional view of the lands plus our contours. In order to facilitate that, we thought if we just put a little bit away every year for that expenditure to come up, then it's not one big lump that council's having to consider in any one budget year. But deferring this by an additional year isn't going to hurt the organization. It just delays us another year of gathering that funding to replace the photos. The current photos that we have on our Unisite site that the public sees are 2018. So should the town experience a bunch of development between now and the next time that we can update this imagery, then it just kind of limits the ability for different land developers and realtors to use it effectively. But I don't feel that us deferring it an additional year is going to hamper our efforts significantly, if I may put it that way. Thank you.
if I may, then I appreciate that. Taking was in the budget, taking it out. It's just important for me to understand you know, what, and it sounds like there is no risk, so I would be in favor of then keeping this as is, so, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor LaBerge.
That was a comment, that was amazing.
For myself, I actually want to remove this one. I liked that we were working towards this. I remember that committee of the whole meeting, we were all pretty excited about what it does. And I'm trying to look at these things, or what are the things that we actually kind of don't want, or I kind of want this. So I have no problem using the accumulated surplus to keep this on the same track that it was prior, and that this doesn't add an extra $30,000 to a future budget that we have to then pick and choose and compete for other things. So I'd rather commit that as that surplus, because it's, to me, a great program. So I appreciate administration only had a week to bring stuff, and some of these things are, I think, less important and more important. This, to me, is an important one to keep going the same way. So I'll actually be voting against keeping it the way it is currently. Councillor Race.
Yeah, thanks. I share what you're saying. And when we look back into our first strategic planning, land was very important. So I share your concerns and I would support.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Hawes.
You bring up a great point, and it's because if we kick this down and defer it, then we have to consider it next time. And what else are we going to have to defer, or what else are we going to be up against? You know, and I appreciate that. You know, I at first, when I first looked at this, I wanted to keep it, or wanted to it be in the budget and not remove it. And you know, I'm now weighing the removing it and then kicking it down further, and is it going to be a priority then next year? You know, I don't know. It depends on the budget talk. So I'm leaning that down to the same as Mayor Michaels and Councillor Race, honestly, because I think this is important too. This is, you know, part of that strat plan, and it's a benefit to our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor LaBerge.
So we do have one. If we didn't have one, then I would be thinking, wow, we need to get cracking. The one we have is from 2018. Fact is, we've done very little since 2018. So 2018 is pretty relevant today. And so if we delay this by a year and move this on a year, I just don't see it as we're missing this critical marketing piece. I mean, we have it here. And again, somehow we got to come up with $240,000. So I think this is the sort of thing that delaying it a year just because of the lack of development is something I think we can have a look at.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted, if I could speak to Councillor LaBerge's comment. Debbie, sorry, I know your voice is not great. I believe we were so our current aerial is 2018, and I believe the accrual we were talking over 5 years would mean that we would be replacing it essentially around about 2027. Is that correct, or am I interpreting that wrong? When, with the current approved budget, what year would we be actually going to market and getting our photography updated?
I'd have to check back with the original business case. If you just give me a moment to do that, please.
Okay. It's just my concern. I'm not sure, like if we're thinking that we're going to have this in 2023, I'm not sure that's the case. That's what I wanted to.
So just for clarification, I believe council understands that we're not going to be updating it, but it's saving that 30,000 every year for future use. So I just don't want to cause an issue if there's no issue there. I think that was my understanding. I know we weren't going to use that money, but my premise was that, well, then we have to say, you know, yeah, it'll be pushed back a year, or we have to get extra funds competing with other things in future years. So Councillor LaBerge.
Well, yeah, my comment is I appreciate there's going to be a delay. I guess my point is our starting point is pretty secure today, given that very little's happened since 2018. So if we start today or next year, given not much has changed since then, we still have time to put it together, I guess is my point.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I'm okay with deferring this as well, because right now what we're looking at in the budget, or what we've been looking at so far, is negatives. And what's going to happen in the next year is there's going to be positives that happen in the budget that save us money. and we've had surpluses in the past, be able to take advantage of those. We haven't talked about much in the way of positive, so we did on the Lieutenant Lands debenture, I guess, but there are going to be lots of little things like that that are going to save us money. There's going to be opportunity to make this up.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Okay, council, if there's nothing further, I'm going to seek consensus to leave it the way it is, so it would be deferred to a future year. All those in favor of deferring it and keeping it as is? All those opposed? That is defeated. So that would.
So what that would do is we will. That's the adjustment. I'm gonna just. The next one, sir, is, so you'll see that that has now.
You might have to scroll down. Or no.
Ms. Weber, did you want to speak to this item?
Yes, just to answer the question that you posed, ICA O'Hanlon. So in the business case, we were suggesting a savings of $30,000 towards the imagery this year for 2022 and another 30,000 towards imagery in 2023, of which we would use 50,000 just to update the imagery. And then we would drop down to keeping 12,500 annually for our next purchase of imagery, which would occur in 2028.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any questions on that? Councillor LaBerge and Councillor.
Well, I guess then I put it out to my fellow councillors and say, we're not talking about putting this out there 5 years. We're not buying this in 8 years. I mean, this is a 3-year turnaround right now, so we can save 30 grand. And instead of buying it in 24, we buy it in 25. That's essentially what we're talking about here, is moving a 2-year cycle up 1 year to save the 30 grand. So not to open it up again, but put it back out to my fellow councillors.
Councillor Race?
Are we losing money or saving money?
That would reduce the budget. That's 30 grand we're not going to spend on LiDAR.
Okay, but should we do it next year? What would it cost us?
30 grand.
Just still 30. Okay, and another thing I want to bring up, it says deferred to future year. I initially was assuming it was next year. It could be any year, couldn't it?
I see O'Hanlon.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
I think it's worth noting, council can't bind future budgets. So it would certainly, I would envision these being important to administration, to council, and they would come back as part of your 2023 budget discussions, but you're not bound to approve them. Choices are that, this would, that's why I chose deferred to future year.
Before we go to Councillor Hawes and Councillor Taylor, if I can ask a question to administration, just to clarify it. If the recommendation that administration is saying to do, even though we voted, but we can revisit that, no problem. Is there any actual work change in 2022 and 2023 with this decision? Because I was under the understanding that this is just saving the 30,000, and I want to go back to Ms. Weber's comment. Actual work will be changed if we chose to go with administration's recommendation.
Ms. Weber?
Thank you through ICA O'Hanlon to council. No, this is just us putting away money of $30,000 for 2022. And then we would ask to put away another $30,000 next year to pay for a consultant to do our aerial imagery again. So no, it is not changing any works at this point.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Taylor and Councillor LaBerge.
My suggestion is that we revote because there's been new information provided.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LaBerge?
No, I'm good for now, thanks.
So with this new information, I'll re-seek consensus. I'll speak to it.
it's not a horrible position regardless of the way it goes, but for me, again, I'd rather start saving the year before for it. Again, it'll compete in future years. I do feel a little bit better that if the vote doesn't go the way I vote, that it's not a terrible position to be in. So, but I'll still be speaking the same way. Council, anything further before I seek consensus? Seeing none, I'll seek consensus to defer this to the future year as administration has presented. All those in favor of that? All those opposed? And again, consensus had remained. Thank you, Ms. Weber, for that information, and council for redeliberating that. That'll bring us to the overseeding program. ICO Hanlon, any comments regarding that?
Not too much. This is our fields and outdoor maintenance program and so we've not bought anything yet. We haven't got this one up and running yet this year. So there's nothing out of pocket that's been expended. It could be deferred and not much more. I'm not sure. Jen, who have we got with us? Is it just Debbie and Mac left?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon.
No.
Oh,
sorry. Who are you looking for?
I just if there is Winston or Laura, if they're able to
They're
speak.
both here.
Okay. So, sorry, sir. Administration is here and can speak a bit more to the overseeing program and the impacts of deferring it a year if you wish.
okay, well, first then I'll go to council and then, or Ms. Howard, did you want to comment? You're muted.
Thank you, sir. I can't see my video either, probably because we have the other screen up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. So yes, this is the overseeding program that would be the first of 3 years before we would start to see some sort of impact in the reduction of the staffing time that it takes to do the pulling of the weeds by hand. So the intent here is to choke out the weeds by overseeding and getting the grass to be healthy. We have some target areas where we would do that. So this would simply be deferring that 3-year program to start next year. Again, council.
Oh, we lost you.
Next.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Howard. I have Councilor LeBears and Councilor Hawes.
Yeah, I mean, that was gonna be my comment, it was my understanding is this was an experiment to try and save money. And I mean, I'll make the same comment about the bill pay consolidation. I mean, if you're gonna take money out of the budget that's intended potentially to save money, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. So for me, I think this one has some significant potential to do just that and to look good. And so, I mean, my preference would be to leave that in place and see if we can in fact save some money.
Thank you, Councilor LeBears. Councilor Hawes.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. I mean, the whole idea behind this was exactly that, is to save money. And on top of that, looking at that potential service review that we're going to be doing along with it, I think is the route we need to take, in this area. So I would too. I think this is a reasonable leave in option here, because it may save us money. I don't want to delay that. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. I'll be speaking in favor of not deferring it, to remove this as a recommendation for the same points that were spoken to earlier. Council, any further comments before I call this for consensus? Seeing none, I'll seek consensus to keep this to defer it to a future year. All in favor? All opposed? And that will be removed. Okay, Council, thank you. That'll bring us to bill pay consolidation for $11,100. ICO Hanlon, any comments?
This is a customer service improvement. It is designed to assist our customers, and there are some potential cost savings. Again, it's not been, we've not committed to it contractually yet. Money has not been expended, and it is something we could consider and defer to next year. We don't believe that there would be a significant cost increase if it were deferred a year, but as was spoken to earlier, the savings, the customer service improvements would be delayed a year in implementation.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. I have Councillor Race and Councillor LaBerge.
Thank you, sir. You know, when I look back to our operating budget discussion, this was a big one. This was something that would really assist our corporate services. So I would hate to see this money taken away.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor LaBerge.
I'm good for now.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I don't want to defer this. I think due to customer service and the fact that, again, efficiencies and saving money. So I have no interest in deferring this and keeping it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, of all these items, this is the one I want to keep the most because it creates efficiencies in our data entry in the financial department. And that's a department that would be as efficient as it possibly can. So
Thank you,
to really have time to do the important stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. With that, I'll seek consensus to defer the bill payment consolidation. All those in favor? All those opposed? That will be removed. That'll bring us to the wildflower beautification for $10,000. ICO Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Through you to all of council. This is another initiative in which we hope to naturalize and return some of our areas back to naturalized state, and wildflowers assist with that. Again, it's a first of a 3-year program and would allow us to reduce maintenance costs in terms of mowing some of these areas. And again, nothing's been expended yet and or initiated in that area. And Ms. Horvath is available if necessary to speak to this.
Thank you for that, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, for the same reasons of the overseeding, I'm gonna same reasons for this one. I think one, it can benefit us efficiencies. It might reduce some areas that need servicing because of the flowers. So, and a lot of communities are using this and are seeing cost savings, you know, both to labor and to equipment and things like that. So I'm of the same mind to not defer this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any further comments? I share the same concept regarding this one. I have no problem using 10,000 from the accumulated surplus to continue this on. Council, any last comments before I call this to consensus? Seeing none, all those in favor of deferring this to a future year? All those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. That will be removed. And that will bring us to our development and infrastructure budget reductions of $25,000. ICO Hanlon.
These, as I mentioned, it's an assortment of GL codes. So again, it's a bit here and there throughout the development infrastructure functional area. Winston does assure me that minimal service level impacts, no service level eliminations or anything like that. These are some further reductions beyond the ones they did initially that they feel they can absorb in their 2022 budget.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. I have Councillor Haas, LaBerge, Taylor, Reese.
Yeah, these are one of those that I have to go on trust from. I guess that was going to be my question, though, that we're not going to get an email of a particular thing, you know, kind of out of left field where, you know, we reduced it by 25,000 and then this is the service that now we're, so as long as you can assure, you know, that is, or that department can assure that it's not, I'm okay with this. I have to defer to administration on this one personally. Thank you.
Thank you. ICO Hanlon.
If I could, sir, just very briefly in response, our discussions were for this and the next one that these needed to be minimal service level impacts or no service level impacts. If they were going to have anything that needed to be presented to council here tonight and specific as to what that impact would be or elimination would be. So these are considered minimal and speak to that, I believe.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councilor LaBerge?
Well, I mean, I'll make the same comment for both the remaining items. We've gone to our professional managers, we've asked them for their input and be disrespectful to do anything other than go, cool, we could save $39,000.
Councilor LaBerge, Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, sure, I'm all in favor. I just don't quite understand what it is. So we're getting rid of the general ledger code. The general ledger code, I'll make it multiple choice for you. Because there's a project, and we're not doing the project, because there was padding in the general ledger code, or for some other reason. Maybe we have so many general ledger codes that we've been through a number of different finance managers that some we just have too many, and we're getting rid of some of the ones we don't really know what they're for.
ICO Hanlon?
Or there's a choice D, which is something else.
Okay, well, I won't go with all of the above. That was what I usually did in university, and I never got it far. But let me speak, and it's a very good question, sir. So through you to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, we do benefit in both of these. So first, please to clarify, it's not a general ledger or a GL elimination. It's a bit out of a number of GL codes. So it's reducing here and there as they look at their budgets. So to the best of my understanding, and I could stand to be corrected, but I believe it's just reductions in a number of GL codes. As to what or padding, it's a bit along the lines of the Bhutan land discussion a little earlier. We're 5 months into the budget year now, and they're starting to get a better sense of just where some of their projects and expenditures are going. And so they're able to take a more critical eye at the budget, at the approved budget, and say, here's where we can offer some savings back to council for the coming year.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councilor Taylor?
Choice D.
Thank you. Councilor Race?
Thank you, sir. I don't want to come across too picky, but at our last regular council meeting, I said, if you're going to do anything to our service levels, are you going to bring that back and be very specific in the service levels that you will be affected? And you had said yes. So could you give me just an idea of the minimal service level that could be affected?
Sir, if I could, through you to Councillor Race, to all of council, if I could maybe speak to both of them, and maybe because I could start. So in the community protective services area, it's mostly coming out of travel and training. And so again, we're to the midpoint of the year, and so Matt realizes that some of the training that had been budgeted for either is past, hasn't been done, or they're willing to defer to future years in order to help balance the budget. So from a service level perspective, that one's really clear. That's professional training and development of our staff team, and they're willing to offer that to get us closer to a balanced budget. In the development and infrastructure area, is Winston with us?
He was just on, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Winston,
Here he is.
in fairness, I don't want to speculate on yours so much, but the question of council is the $25,000 proposed out of the development and infrastructure area. Can you give us a bit of an idea of what that may be, and just confirm that it will indeed be minimal, if any, in terms of any service level impacts, if any, that it would be minimal? Can you speak to that, sir?
Yes, thank you, ICO Hanlon, through to the mayor and council. When we talk about minimal impact that will be likely be entertained by us, we've looked at various elements, and we looked at our staff as well as to what we could mitigate for now, 2022, pardon me. So to give you some idea, just as an example, we have a capital project this year for the first time that speaks to CCTV camera work. But then in one of our GLs, we also used to carry CCTV, but that was more for our laterals. when we have breakages. So what we've done is we've reduced some of that because we had a capital that we can now cover some of those lateral CCTV footage that we can record, and then we have that. So that's where we got some reduction. Having a CET on board and myself and Ms. Weber, we reduced some of the consulting fee that we felt that we could get through. How did we do this? It wasn't just trying to take 5,000 or 3,000 from that. We looked at past expenditures. We looked at upcoming expenditures. So it doesn't mean because we never spent much in 2021 that was padded. It was 2021 was really likely due to COVID, due to certain projects and not having the necessary resources to do that. So what we're doing is that we're evaluating what is needful for us to be able to get through the capacity of 2022. Being in May 2022, we literally have half a year left. And so that's how we got down to the reduction up to 25,000 and change. But it doesn't mean that certain things are not going to happen. So one final example is bridge evaluation and inspection for culverts. We realize that we don't have bridges per se, maybe one or two, and large culverts. Is that something that we could do a visual ourselves and then, evaluate what is the need to have that bridge fixed other than a structural fix? We would need a professional engineer to give us a report. So we kind of reduced it by 2,500, 3,000. So the impact to 2022 is going to give us a very good idea in 2023 what our real number should be. What we've sacrificed this year in terms of doing minimal, not sacrificing doing no work, what would be that budget for 2023? So we are very tight on the bone, and there may be, so for argument's sake, snow removal. The year's not over yet. November, December could be very serious months of snow falling. We may have to go and do the snowfall removal because that's our level of service. Could we overexpend? Likely, if it's a very busy November, December. If it's just a mild November, December, we will be good potentially. So that's how we looked at it as infrastructure line by line, item for item, and then evaluated that against what's the impact to the service levels. So we're comfortable being 5 months into the year that the 25,000 is not going to adversely impact us unless we have the happenings such as heavy snowfall towards the end of the year, and maybe a collapse of anything that is unforeseen right now. And as I explained, the CCTV, that's where we're able to gauge based on having a capital program this year. We could reduce some on the operational side because we have a dual function going forward there. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Councilor Rice?
With community and protective services reductions, is that training that they have been counting on in that department?
So if I may, could we just stay on development and infrastructure unless they're tied together? Unless there was an appetite of council to do both together, I'd like to just at least move on from development and
Sorry, I
infrastructure.
thought he had spoken to one and then he jumped to the next one.
And to admit same thing, so we can keep some continuity.
Yeah. I'm good.
Councilor Taylor?
I don't think anything you said is meant as a criticism. I think we all appreciate the fact that you're tightening budgeting in our general ledger codes. I think that's what we're expressing. I have comments about other departments that I haven't seen on general ledger codes, but because it's not on topic, I'll wait until after we've done the next two.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Council, any further questions before I see consensus for development and infrastructure budget reductions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minimal service level impacts to development and infrastructure budget reductions, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. And our last one from administration is community and protective services reductions. Any further comments before I open it up to the floor? I see O'Hanlon.
If I could perhaps, Mac, are you there?
I'm here. I don't have my picture up. I don't see my button there anymore.
That's okay. There was a question of council in terms of the majority of the cuts coming from community protective services, particularly in the travel and training area. Is any of this going to cut individuals who are really excited or interested or expecting to do this training this year? Or is this going to be okay, we defer it a year?
Through the chair, to answer that question, that we gave up any out of province travel. There was one conference that I was waiting for in honesty, the operational budget to be approved, but it wasn't in time. The conference that we wanted to attend to send 3 people to down in the United States is past. It ended last week. So that was an easy, well, we give that up. We don't do it this year. We haven't been able to do that conference for the last 2 years because of COVID. One more year will make no difference to me. And it's similar with the other training and travel. It's not courses that we're counting on. It's the extra training, mostly out of province and or great distances. And the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs Conference, I gave up that conference travel to help reach a balanced budget.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Race, any further?
Thank you.
Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. It's a general comment about, because in the past, we've heard a lot about where our budget for training. So I share Councillor Race's thoughts on that, I think, because I'm okay with conferences. Conferences is one thing. It may not bring back a huge benefit, but if it's training, I really, I think, again, we've heard in the past, we don't have the budget for it, and I don't want to give it up when trainings are coming up. So I 100% agree. I mean, conferences are one thing. Sometimes they're fun. You learn a little bit, but when it comes to training, I really hope that we aren't just dismissing it and to find and save dollars, because in the long run, training is also important to our staff as well and to efficiencies and all that. So I'm okay with this, but just for future, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, anything further before I call this to consensus? Seeing none, I'll call to question to have minimal service level impacts to the community and protective services, reductions of 14,500. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Councillor Taylor.
Oh, well, I have 3 topics actually for potential savings. Well, maybe it's a question. So like I said, we've got the development infrastructure, community and protective services that look like they've tightly managed their GL codes. But I see nothing from Parks and Rec regarding reductions to their dozens of general ledger codes. Were there no savings there?
I see your hand.
Sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, all of the directors and managers were charged to try and find some savings, and what council is looking at here today is those findings. So,
Mr. Taylor.
So there are no savings there?
There was none that were brought forward. So I do believe that all of the directors and managers reviewed their budgets and felt that their budgets were adequate for the balance of the year. We do have, of course, development infrastructure, community and protective services provided us this. So.
Absolutely.
We got a number of staff hirings where we're not going to be able to hire them throughout the year. Those are positives to the budget. Are those factored in someplace in the budget?
Mr. O'Hanlon.
Sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, those should be recognized by any organization. However, and I will say they are also offset by, such as myself, interim positions that come in. They're funded from that same human resource code and codes, and also any statutory obligations when we part ways with employees. There's payouts and there's packages that are required. And so those tend to eat up savings that we may think are available. So again, I am confident that administration has viewed and considered those both in terms of vacancies this year and then offset by interim or other obligations that often, unfortunately, tend to eat up those savings.
So we're not going to have a huge surplus from that at the end of the year, but it's be carefully managed, is what you're saying.
serve through you to Councillor Taylor? I believe so, yes.
Okay, perfect. That just leaves me one more potential savings, and that's the, can we add the public works lead hand for 8,500, please?
Absolutely.
Did you want to speak to that prior to me opening it up to the floor, Councillor Taylor?
Well, that was the one where it's not a full-time position, but it's just adding a kind of lead hand or a supervisory position in a relatively small department of 5 people. So it really steepens up the supervision pyramid in that department, and at a cost of $8,500. In light of this budget, that seems like something that maybe we should at least vote on and consider.
Councillor Taylor, Councillor LaBerge.
My question to administration, has this person started in that role yet?
Winston, are you able to speak to this item? I don't believe so, sir, but I'm going to ask Winston just to speak to the Public Works lead hand. That has not been, I know we were in some discussions about this, but I don't believe that we've awarded that or that there's an expectation of award. Is that correct?
Thanks, ICO Hanlon, through to the chair, to all of council. It's not a position, it was a added function that we wanted to add to one of the 11 people that Mr. Martineau John manages. So just to Councillor Taylor for a moment, it's not 5 people in that group, there's at least 11 people that is in the Public Works team. And this is supposed to be a working lead hand. So it would be an existing employee that would be getting an uplift of $1 or $2 per hour, whatever that may work out to be, and to help us still operate a machine or be functional, but have that oversight for that 11 to 12 people that's within that group as a additional set of eyes for quicker decision making. So it's not a FTE we're adding, it is simply an additional function to a person or a rotational basis that we would have looked at through those that will be eligible to act as a lead hand within Public Works. The final is that nobody has been appointed yet to start that rotation or to act in that position. So no dollars have been spent to date.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Councillor LaBerge.
Just to follow up then, Mr. Russo, is my recollection of this initial proposal was your suggestion that this was a training opportunity. Is that correct?
Through to the chair, to Councillor LaBerge, that is correct. So that we have an aging population within Public Works and within utilities, that this will help us to have depth on the bench and a training opportunity as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. Councillor Taylor.
I don't understand. These 11 people, they report to one person? Is that what you just told us? Or are there supervisors and stuff in between? And how does this lead hand fit into that existing 11-person structure?
Mr. Russo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Taylor. This person is already, or people that could be a lead hand, is part of the 11 group. And so to give you a scenario, Councillor Taylor, is that let's say there is 6 people out of the 11 that is able to act as a lead hand, maybe on a 3-monthly basis, giving each one a chance. That's where we build the strength, that where we build the capacity within the team. So should the supervisor, there's no interim supervisor. Mr. Martineau is the ultimate supervisor for all 11 people. And so the lead hand component would be that the person is still expected to do his or her job, but with an additional responsibility of supervision at the time that they act as a lead hand on a potential rotational basis.
Councillor Taylor.
Okay, so all 11 people report to the same person. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hawes and Councillor Race.
Yeah, I spoke to this when we had the initial, and I'll speak to it again, where I won't be in favor of removing this. There is a huge benefits to this. one, the succession and the training for $8,500, the potential for training, potential for learning that can occur within the department is, I think, a benefit. And I speak from personal experience in an organization that uses this type of structure. It takes a huge load off the managers, and the managers can focus on other matters other than those 11 people have to directly report to that person. They have to supervise them directly. There's somebody that's in between. They still are managed by the manager, but I think there's more accountability then, there's more structure. So I for $8,500 in a budget, I think this has huge benefits to our organization, that if we have this lead hand position, especially in, I think, in this department in particular. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. Is this a rotating position, or are we talking one and five or several?
Mr. Russo, I think you indicated that this will be rotating.
Through to the chair, to Councillor Race, correct, it will be a rotational basis. And that's the whole preface of it, to give as many people in the department a fair opportunity to act in the position should they elect to accept such a role for the time being, as being a month or 2 or 3 stint, correct?
So, quick question. What has the response been to this in that department?
If I may, through to the chair, to Councillor Race, initially there was clarification that was sought. How is it going to be implemented? Is it going to be choosing one person over the other? And with several discussions with the team, we said that everybody has a fair opportunity. 1 or 2 people actually physically came back to me and said, I'm interested, I'm not interested. And so it has been more positive than, I would say, negative, as people are understanding the intent moving forward.
I think for me, I like the idea of rotating position. I love the succession planning that brought up. That's so important. And I would like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor LeBerge.
Yeah, I'm not going to support this. The only, I guess the primary reason for me is we went back to infrastructure. Mr. Russo came forward with $25,000 worth of savings out of this budget. Now we're going to go back to him and say, give us another $8,500 or whatever. This is one that is supported by Mr. Russo, particularly in this department. So for $8,500, those other reasons are important, but this department's really stepped up here. So.
Thank you, Councillor LeBerge. I spoke against this during the budget process. I'll stay consistent with that for myself. The budget has changed immensely with a lot of curveballs, sinkers, whatever, which makes me want to support this even more. That if we were in the opposite position, then I would consider it. But we are in a position where it's been a challenge. So again, I echo Councillor LeBerge. Mr. Russo and his department has done an excellent job. But specific to this, I think this is something that could be deferred to implement. So I would support Councillor Taylor's approach to put this, although I'm doing quick math right now. It may be irrelevant. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I guess to that point, and again to this department, I agree with Councillor LeBerge. I mean, they've already coughed up another $25,000 to do that, and I'm confident in that, Mr. Russo. If this wasn't a program that he felt was going to benefit his group, that he would have added that into the $2,500 or $25,000. But the fact that it's not, it's left in there, also states to me how confident he is in that department and the benefit it has to the community. And he's shown over and over again that, so I have to support leaving this in there. I think it's a good approach. And I'm looking forward to potentially in the future for other departments to maybe look at this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Taylor.
No.
Okay, good.
Council, any further debate before I call to question to include this in? So if you want to support Councillor Taylor's vote in favor of this, and if not, you vote against. Council, all those in favor of including the Public Works lead hand for $8,500. All those in favor?
I mean deferring it.
Would be correct. All those opposed? That is defeated. And council, anything further before we look to give direction on the amended portion? Councillor Hollis.
I guess I have a question now that we see the and I know we haven't passed it yet, but the surplus that we're taking, have we concluded how much that surplus is? Because last meeting we weren't totally sure on that. What is that surplus number? Are we at a number at this point confirmed?
We are not, and in fact, you'll see that's why in my proposed motion, I'm saying the accumulated surplus, which is different than the year-over-year operating surplus. We know for sure that we have the monies in the accumulated surplus to do this, and that'll allow finance and the auditor to confirm what the year-over-year operating is.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Okay, Council, if there's nothing further, if there is appetite to approve the new number, we're going to have to rescind the previous one at the very least. ICO Hanlon?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, sir. If we're moving to motions, could I respectfully request 5 minutes so that Jen and I can just prepare those for your consideration based on our discussion so far?
Okay, we'll take a quick.
Can I ask
Yeah,
a question before we go though? So when I'm looking at page 10 of our report, 10 and 11. So, and this keeps now. So we have this $900 and some thousand from the 2021 surplus. Now, on the bottom of that chart on 10, it says taking this from 2022 accumulated surplus. So are we taking it from the 900 grand we had too much last year? Or are we taking it from the 2022 accumulated surplus? Is that something that we track and we should be spending?
Sir, if I could, through you to Councilor Lavarge. So when I say the 2022 accumulated surplus, that is to be confirmed by the auditor of the finance department. So that is your ongoing accumulated surplus that you see in your audited statements. The year-over-year surplus or deficit, we don't know the exact number on that, and finance is struggling with that, and that is what led to the delay of the auditor presenting their financial statements. And so because we're not certain on what that number actually year over year is going to be, that's why we've moved to suggesting that the funding source be the accumulated surplus, which we are confident in. We know that there's enough in there to cover whatever may be necessary here today.
So as a follow-up then, so from the time we approved this budget in March until now, we've got an extra 300 grand sitting in this budget to cover this in our accounts. So, and we still have 900 grand left over from too much from 2021. Is that correct?
Well, we don't know that for sure, sir.
But whether it's 923 or 887 or 850, there's about 900 grand that was left over from last year. Is that correct?
We're not confident.
Okay, there's an amount that's left, say it's between 200 and 950. There's an amount there, right, from last year?
There should be.
Okay,
there should
between
be some,
0
yeah.
and 950, okay? Okay, there's an amount, correct?
Correct.
You're ignoring that with this recommendation, and you're saying from the savings in this year's budget, which in my mind would be the accumulated surplus, there's 300 grand available to pay for this out of this year's budget. Is that correct?
We're not confident in that. So when I say the accumulated surplus, I apologize, but the accumulated surplus is ongoing. It's year upon year, the accumulated surplus. And I'm going to just Ruth, are you there? she had a commitment with her
So
husband.
if I may, because I was with Councillor LaBerge, but the recommended action doesn't refer to any year. Is that, oh no?
So maybe if we see a surplus this year, it moves to the accumulated surplus. So if you imagine, trying to think of an analogy that doesn't sound poor, but there is sorry, I wish I had the financial statements with me. Our accumulated surplus net for the town of Hinton is substantial.
It's $625 million.
Yes, so I know that we have the money to pull currently $340,500 out of that. If I were to say, and this comes back to procedure and comes back to the audit, if I were to say, take it out of the 2020, the 2021, 2022 operating surplus, and let's for argument's sake say that's only $200,000, then we fail here because we're proposing $340,500. So we wouldn't actually, it would be incorrect because the operating year-over-year surplus would not be enough to cover the number.
Councillor LaBerge.
I think Ruth is online.
So just one more question before we move on to that. So I can see not being sure about $8 grand, $12 grand, not being sure about $923,000 is a completely different thing. I mean, I've heard that number in front of council a bunch of times. Like it, and I guess we're getting a little offline now, but my good God, if we've gone from we think it's 923 to we have no idea what it is. Wow.
If I could, sir, Ruth is with us. So Ruth, do we have any better idea on the 2021, 2022 year-over-year operating surplus? Do we know what that number, or are we closer on that number, or are we still waiting with the auditor?
We have not had confirmation from the auditor as yet. And no, we're still not certain, but I think we're closer to the 900 than we're alluding to. But we're trying to be cautious about it because we don't want to say something that's going to be dead wrong in the water and have council be concerned with it. So I guess maybe we are erring perhaps on the side of caution, hopeful that it is going to be that number, but we don't know because we're really uncertain about the accumulated surplus as well. I'm not being very helpful.
No, thank you, Ruth. I think Councillor LaBerge brings up a good point, and where I actually stand, and we've done this for other motions, I'm kind of comfortable directing administration to reduce the town of Hinton's 2021 accumulated surplus by the amount, with condition that if there's not enough money there, then it comes to council for decision to come out of the accumulated surplus. Why don't we give strict direction that it's coming out of the operating surplus that creates the premise of why we're even doing this. And if it's not there, then we have like, oh God, we're really off, like Councillor LaBerge said. And then we publicly then have a conversation to make another motion in the future that it will come from the accumulated surplus. But to play really cautious right now speaks to the opposite of what we've been building up. We've been doing these exercises with the anticipation that it's close. And if it doesn't reach 340, we got a way bigger problem. And 340 to me should be there. So my brain is kind of working towards a hybrid where this is what we're doing first, and if not, bring it back and we'll approve through the other channel. But to approve it through the other channel and just leave it, I don't know if I'm comfortable yet with that.
If I could, sir, and maybe I've not done a good job, and Ruth can chime in. It all ends up in the same place, is what I'm trying to say. So whether the auditor comes in and says you've got a year-over-year operating surplus of 500,000, And we have a motion that says potentially $340,500 of that is transferred into tax revenue for 2022 to balance the budget. The remainder of that 500,000 goes into the accumulated surplus. That's just the accounting practice. That's where it goes. So if we dip in and take it out of the accumulated surplus, it's being replenished by whatever the surplus is for 2021. Correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
So I'm gonna go to Councillor Taylor in one moment. My last thing is there literally no difference to indicate whether it comes from operating surplus or the accumulated surplus? Is there literally no difference to the town?
Ruth, let me try, Ruth.
In regards to money that would remain in reserves.
Yeah. Let me try this, sir. The audit will be very transparent as to what the 2021 operating surplus or deficit is. It's a budget line item. It'll be very transparent in a different area, in a different number, what the accumulated surplus is for the year. And so council and anybody watching our process here will see that when the auditor comes back in June and confirms what those numbers are.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, then Councillor LeBert.
So report of order, you get a motion
It's
to
a new
extend.
meeting. New meeting.
They're accumulated together.
Administration, as per procedural bylaw, do we have to do a motion to extend since we're in a second meeting?
One moment, please. I'm just trying to remember if it was 4 hours or 8 o'clock was the.
Yeah, it says no item of business may be dealt with at the committee of the whole meeting after 8 PM unless the motion to council is passed. But we're in a special meeting.
I would suggest that we need a motion of council.
Okay, thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Haas.
I'd like to make a motion to extend, please.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion on the floor to extend. Seeing no one, all those in favor? Thank you, Councillor Haas. And where, Councillor Taylor?
Yeah. Well, I'm just confused because we are going from one meeting where we're comfortable to be at $900,000 to another meeting where we're not comfortable. So just causing me confusion. Question, listen, you can call it out.
Council, anything further to discuss, Councillor LeBert?
Well, just my comment, I guess, the $625 million is hopefully just a tiny little bit of cash and a whole bunch of assets. So it's not like we're dipping in there to draw whatever we need. So this whole identifiable pool of money is a bit different. I mean, that $625 million is comprised mostly of things and not of money. So we are talking about a different thing here. This $1 million essentially that we've collected from taxpayers over and above what we dedicated to spend on them is different than the fact that we own this building, I think, as we think this through.
Councillor Taylor.
625 million or whatever it is includes tangible capital assets, which in government includes stuff that you can't sell, you can't rent out, and you can't lease. So that's what it includes.
So council, I'll reiterate my point. I don't know what the will of council is for the actual direction, whether it's a hybrid, but I'd like to point it out that it comes from the operating surplus. To me, still, I think it makes a difference. We either have that portion or not, and that changes the whole context of what we're doing. And if we don't have that money, then I don't even know where that leads us. So I don't know. I'm still confused with the recommended direction here. Councillor LeBert.
And we do have a motion out there, take $260,000 out of that amount to reduce taxes. Like, it's already out there.
Correct.
It's really what we're talking about is adding this $80,500 on to that same motion. We're having a second motion saying we're going to pay this amount from the same place, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Haas.
Well, isn't the recommendation to rescind that very motion and then make another motion with that amount? Is that just for clarity?
That is correct. So that it is a single motion. But we can still confirm whether it's the 2022 accumulated surplus or the 2021 operating surplus, the wording can still be done. I'm not sure if council wishes to belabor this, sir. If there was a desire for further discussion on this, I would need to ask to go in camera.
So what I'll do, I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess, let administration work on their potential motions and us to reconvene and see if we can bring some clarity to this. So we'll reconvene at 10 after.
Give me 2 seconds.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to reconvene this meeting at 8:15 p.m. ICO Hanlon, anything from administration before I open it up to council?
Sir, just if I could, thank you for that opportunity. So we have prepared what I would suggest are 3 separate motions based on the discussions thus far. And thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any further questions, comments before I hand it back to administration with potential options for us to deliberate? Councillor Hawes.
I guess just a clarification, maybe, but you indicated earlier, ICO Hanlon, potentially there may be information that would need to be in a closed session that might help with some clarity on this. Is that, do you feel necessary at this time based on the conversations thus far?
I think based on the conversations thus far, it's not necessary.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council? Councillor Taylor.
Wondering if there's any appetite for my colleagues to add another potential savings to challenge the Parks and Rec Department for some GL code savings of about $50,000.
Was that a question to council?
Yeah. Since it's a department that hasn't seemed to have stepped up.
So I'll ask administration a question, seeing that infrastructure and parks and development and the other line items, and I want to preface this that I was very pleased and I like that what was turned around in 4 or 5 days. If there was conversation to find $15,000 extra from Parks and Rec, any comment on if that's doable and what kind of impacts that would have?
I think if I could, sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, to all the council, and I do see Ms. Howarth is with us as well, but I'd like to start first is just a reminder to council, we really do, we have to pass a budget tonight. We have to confirm this budget so we can move on the tax rate bylaw. So if we were to make such a requirement of any department, including Parks and Rec, it would be done so with the understanding that we could not necessarily confirm what those cuts would be if an amount was dictated by council. And we could not confirm, though we would certainly attempt to ensure that there was no service level impacts. We could not confirm or share with you that there'd be none or what those might be, because in fairness to the department, we wouldn't know what those cuts would be. If we were tasked with doing it, we would certainly do it, but I can't tell you what those impacts might or might not be. And I don't know if Ms. Howarth, Laura, would you like to speak to council on this matter?
I could just add a couple more things. When we did, we're tasked with the action from the last week, we did take a look at the business cases as well as a quick look at the operating budget. And if there was anything, I guess that could be reconsidered, as well as the 2 business cases, if we would rather recommend keeping those and offering up something instead. And the team that had some time to take a look at this brought forward the fact that even though there's everything in the operating budget, it still came down to the 2 business cases, even though they still really would like to do them. There was nothing else in the operating budget that took that could, I guess, have less of an impact if it was cut than the 2 business cases.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Councillor Taylor, any?
Just that there would be nothing in the budget like the other departments where we're partway through the year and there's no chance that we're going to spend that. If we could maybe tighten up some GL codes.
ICO Hanlon or Ms. Howard, any?
Sir, if I could through you to, there's Laura. Laura, the question from council was, just now that we're nearing the halfway part of 2022, are we confident that there's not potential savings left in the department's budget for the balance of the year?
Yes, again, coincidentally, we just received our exercise to do our first quarter variance reports today. So this staff have already been working on that and not finding anything. And the other thing is having unexpected vacancies such as the Parks Rec and Culture Manager position. We did not budget to have that vacancy and have to recruit for that vacancy. Perhaps bring people to the community and have moving expenses and things like that. So there is no extra money that we've identified right now that we're this far into the year that we would, and we looked at the revenues as well. And if anything, some of our revenues are down. So no easy wins there that we could bring forward.
Councillor Taylor. Thank you. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make, I mean, there was a couple, but council decided to keep those in. That was part of the Parks and Rec department. I mean, I realized there were business cases, but they were the 2 wildflowers and the overseeding. I think this other though, this whole conversation again, just I think emphasizes. I know we haven't passed our strategic plan yet, but part of that discussion was that service level review. And I'm confident that personally, I think once we do that and exercise that there may be those savings that we find eventually in there as well. So, because I mean, we're going to look at the whole organization is my hope. I realize we haven't passed it yet and made that motion, but that was the idea behind our strategic plan. So I think all those things in the future are potential to look at it and see things there. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor LaBerge.
Given where we are in this budget cycle, we have to move forward.
Yeah.
That's my view, is we have to approve this tonight. We needed to push harder on this 4 months ago if that was going to be the deal. Tonight's the wrong night to do this, and I would love to see it. I was disappointed to see there was nothing in there from that department, but I don't. Let's not just keep going around and around in circles.
Thank you, Councillor LaBerge. With that, council, anything further before I hand it over to ICO Hanlon for potential recommendations that have been updated through our conversation? Seeing none, ICO Hanlon.
Sir, thank you. I'll actually just ask Jen at this time. So it's a pretty complicated process. So I know I had presented essentially as one large motion. What I would ask is we break it up into 3 motions. The first being, and you'll see it there, is, and going back to earlier on in this year's budget cycle, we had the motion for the initial $260,000 coming out of reserves. And because it is administration's intent to replace this with the third motion, that's why I'm recommending this one be rescinded. And the third motion will reflect through the second motion the changes to that. But we'll leave it up there. So the first would be seeking, and I'll go through all 3, that council rescind Town of Hinton motion MD 2484, reading that committee directed administration to reduce reserves by $260,000 and to apply these savings to a reduced 2022 tax rate. The second motion would be that council, and these numbers have been updated, thank you again for the time, that council approves the amendments as detailed below and as, oh, you know what? Let's take and as shown in table 1 out, Jen. And we'll respell totaling. Totaling changes in the amount. Okay, so take new out in the amount of So just add of in there.
Oh, sorry.
$154,500 to the 2022 operating budget and 2023-2025 operating plan, as was adopted by the town of Hinton on March 1st, 2022. Reduction of Bhutan lands to venture, 2022 budget, $55,000. Let's change that, sorry, let's change that to buy. So take 2022 budget out and just say buy $55,000. Removal of 2022 Rcmp bylaws study, $60,000. Budget reductions from Development and Infrastructure Department, $25,000. Budget reductions from Community and Protective Services Department, $14,500. That would be the second proposed motion. The third proposed motion, that council direct administration to reduce the town of Hinton's 2021 operating surplus by $340,500 with any potential shortfall funded from the 2022 accumulated surplus, and to direct these accumulated surplus funds to the 2022, excuse me. Can that read, and to direct these surplus funds, take accumulated out. And to direct these surplus funds to the 2022 property tax revenue account to reduce the 2022 tax rate. Administration to provide a report back to council should any accumulated surplus funds be required. That would be the third proposed motion.
Thank you, ICO Hanlon. Councillor Taylor.
You mean to say, those 4 dots, the items, there are budget reductions. Did you mean to say budget reductions, or did you mean to say budget deferrals to future years from?
The final 2 were actually budget reductions submitted by the department directors and managers.
But the removal of the 2022 RCMP bylaws study was a deferral.
We could use deferral if you wish, but again, we're not deferring to a specific year. We're simply removing it from this year's budget.
Yeah.
So this is the actual action. It's not suggesting we won't bring it back as part of next year's budget discussion. It's simply removing it from this year's.
No, I read that. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay.
I read it better now. Thank you. Okay, for that clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor LaBerge.
So I do have one question. So where it says, and it's going to reduce the 2022 property tax revenue. We're gonna put the surplus funds to the 2022 property tax revenue.
Yes, so it's a revenue account.
To reduce the 2022 tax rate.
So,
Yes, I need my motion back.
yeah,
Sorry.
ICO Hanlon, go ahead.
I just actually, Ruth. We've had a chance to introduce these proposed motions. Is there any comments, I think specifically to Councilor LaBerge here, in terms of the second motion? Is there anything you would suggest in terms of wordsmithing that so it's clear as to what the intent of the surplus transfers is?
Could I hear the second motion again, please?
I think we're just trying to, so I'll let you, can you see the screen now, Ruth?
No, I can't.
Oh,
I'm just gonna go straight back to Councillor LaBerge.
Yeah, can you just put that up for a sec, Jen? Because my question is, we're gonna reduce the budget, but reducing the tax rate, I don't understand what the language about reducing the tax rate. Like, we haven't set the tax rate yet, correct?
no, and so if we don't add, so maybe let's take a look at that, sir.
Ruth, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
So Ruth, I'll read it here, and if there's anything that you may suggest. So right now it reads that council direct administration to reduce the town of Hinton's 2021 operating surplus by $340,500 with any potential shortfall funded from the 2022 accumulated surplus, and to direct these surplus funds to the 2022 property tax revenue account to reduce the 2022 tax rate. And then I think that's the main question is.
I'm okay with the way it's.
If we didn't add the revenue, we'd have to increase the taxes to make up the revenue.
That is correct.
Thank you, administration, for that. Councilor LaBerge, anything further for that? Council, any questions? Councilor Hawes?
No, I'm prepared to make the first motion. We have to get that one out of the way first. So I move that council rescind the town of Hinton motion MD 2484, reading that committee direct administration to reduce reserves by 260,000 and to apply these savings to a reduced 2022 tax rate. And really, this is just because of the previous motion, that number's changed now, so legislatively we need to remove that rescind. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor to rescind. Councilor Taylor?
Oh, no, I was going to vote.
Okay. Council, any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Council, any appetite for the second or third motion or any further questions? Councilor Taylor?
I'll do the second motion. Do you want me to read it? Because
Give me a moment.
the CEO has already read it, so we can just cut the base. Thank you.
Jen's just gonna give it.
Everyone else talked about it.
What I'll do is I'll go back to Councilor Taylor and make sure that he's okay with the motion up there.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any further debate, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Councilor Race.
Thank you, sir. I'll make the third motion.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Again, I'll allow Jen David Campbell to put it there, and please allow me or let me know if you're okay with that. To read it if you do not want to.
That's fine, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Debate, questions regarding this one? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilor LaBerge.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor LaBerge. All those in favor?
Thank you, Council.